Everyone's cheers and celebrations echoed throughout the city. Everyone cheered and waved their hands in one direction, calling, "Hero, look here, hero." The hero riding on a handsome horse raised his hand to greet the people. The people stood cheering and calling for the hero, "Here he is." The hero walked among his entourage and headed towards the palace. The people of the kingdom stood on both sides of the road to welcome and applaud the hero. The cheers of the people echoed throughout the kingdom, cheering for Isgard. In a small alley, there were two brothers running towards the main road leading to the palace. The older brother hurriedly ran ahead, and the younger sister also ran after, calling, "Brother, slow down a bit." The brother turned his head and urged his sister, "Hurry up, the parade is about to end." The sister lamented, "Brother, I'm tired." The older brother turned around and continued running and said, "Well, I told you to hurry up." Right now, in front of us was a person wearing a black cloak walking back towards the two brothers. When approaching the person wearing a black robe, the brother suddenly stopped and watched the person wearing a black robe pass by. The younger sister caught up with her brother and saw him stop and asked, "Brother, I told you to go slowly, but why did you stop?" The younger brother turned to look at the person in the black robe with questioning eyes. After the man in the black cloak passed by the two brothers, the younger brother looked in the direction of the cloaked person, wondering. The parade was over there. The older brother immediately stopped, whispering to the younger sister, "Don't look, you idiot." The brother told his sister, "That man was a black magician." The sister asked again, "Black magician?" The brother replied, "Yes." The brother whispered to his sister, "He was cursed." At a palace high above, a holy woman stood by the window looking at the kingdom. Suddenly, the saint felt something. The saint looked out the door and saw a person wearing a black robe entering. The saint looked at the black magician and said, "You have returned, Manold. With this, the ultimate threat of Isgard has finally been eliminated. I want to thank you on behalf of the entire empire." Manold interrupted, "That's enough. Just fulfill her last promise. Right now." The saint replied to Manold, "I remember that. Don't worry, Manold." "No." "Should I call you Kim Minjun?" "No." The black magician took off his hood and cloak to reveal his handsome face. The saint said, "I'll tell you one more time, but I won't entrust you with work in the name of a black magician because I don't like you." Manold replied, "I also hate you so much that I could die right away." "Here you go, holy lady, you continue. There's no denying what you've secretly done for the empire. That's something I'm always grateful for. Even though you're a mess, you've accomplished more than expected. To change stereotypes about dark wizards in Isgard." The saint asked Manold again, "I ask you again, do you really want to return to your real world?" Manold replied, "Yes, let me go back now, I've worked here enough." The saint sighed and said, "If you stay, it's for the good of the empire. I promise you will be compensated for all the hardships you have received and more." Manold said with a smile, "Stop acting, saint." The saint blushed and asked Manold, "What do you mean I'm acting? I'm being very honest." Manold asked the saint, "So what will you give me?" The saint heard that and asked again, "Huh?" Manold stood up, dusted himself off and said, "You forced me here, used me as a slave, and now what else? You want me to stay in the dark and act as a lackey so I can you clean up the mess for me?" Manold raised his hand to his body, looked at the saint menacingly and asked, "In short, will you let me go back?" The saint opened her hands and said, "If you stay, I will give you anything you want, Manold. If you disappear, our empire will." Manold immediately said, "Bring me Korean fried chicken." After listening, the saint asked again, "Huh?" Manold continued, "And boiled pig's feet? You know those things, the food at home is wonderful. You just gave me some dry rich biscuits, it was more like animal food than food for children. Man, how can you expect me to live here when you only feed me that trash food?" After hearing this, the saint looked down as if she had just experienced a big blow and said, "We will try to improve that." Manold immediately continued to say the conditions, "Okay, don't mind what I said, then bring me a high configuration computer with outstanding technical specifications and can connect to the fastest internet speed. I need to receive a bonus from the super game, League of Legends, as a challenger, so please give it to me quickly." Having said that, Manold thought to himself, "I really have top intelligence." "Hi," the saint heard what Manold said and shouted, Stop! Why don't you ask about the things I can give you in Isgard?" The saint clenched her fists and said, "Ha, I understand." The saint looked down and said to the Manold, we will begin the return ceremony. After entering the summoning room, Manold looked at the door. Manold looked around and smiled happily and said, "Hey, I've been here for a long time. There are indeed many memories, even though I don't want to see you again." The saint showed an unwilling expression on her face, but still said, "Stand in the middle of the stone pedestal with the summoning mark, the exact place where you were originally summoned." Manold stood in the middle of the formation. The holy woman began to perform the formation. The saint said to Manold, "I will release my protection first." Manold took off his gloves, looked at the hand and thought, "Divine protection? It's called protection. But actually it's just a magical mark that prevents me from fighting that woman. I will finally be freed from this magic circle, finally." The saint slowly removed the magic mark on the Meinl's hand. The saint asked Manold, "I really don't understand you. You have great power here, both wealth and fame you will receive. Why do you try to give it up?" Manold did not answer the question asked the saint and instead said, "Concentrate on what you are doing, saint." Manold said, "Aren't you worried? Once this magic mark disappears, you could die by my hands." After the saint removed the mark on Meinl's hand, she said, "I have accepted that since I started everything." The saint turned away and said, "The divine protection has been removed. You can kill me if you want. If you have no intention of killing me, I will begin the next stage of the ritual." Manold looked bewildered at his hand that no longer had its mark. The saint walked away and said, "Now I will take away all the power you have in Isgard." Manold smirked. The saint said, "It will be dangerous for you to travel through time and space if you bring the power here." Before she finished speaking, the saint was tied by Meinl's neck with purple power. Manold lifted the saint up high. The saint used both hands to hold the purple power that was controlling her and shouted. The saint turned around uncomfortably and asked, "What is this?" Manold laughed cheerfully and said, "Do you know how difficult it was for me to gain powers like this? Do you really think I would give them up? Clearly, having to give up these powers is just a lie of yours. Stop." Manold regained her strength, and the saint immediately fell to the ground. The saint looked at Manold and thought, "I know what he is planning, but with dark magic, he will not be able to activate the time-space portal." Suddenly, the saint opened her eyes wide, surprised. Manold himself used his power to activate the time-space gate to return. Seeing this, the saint was surprised and thought, how could he open the time-space gate with dark magic? The saint shouted to stop Manold, "Stop! You can't travel through time and space so hastily." Manold replied, "I know. That's why I have practiced it thousands of times. After all, I have reached the peak of my dark magic power. You guys are so strange. Why do you have to divide magic into light and dark? It's all the same." After hearing this, the saint was silent. Manold remembered something and said, "Oh, I have something to give you before I leave." Manold reached into his pocket to grab something. Manold raised his fist. Manold raised his fist as he entered the spacetime portal and said, "It's really nice to know you. Damn saint, let's never meet again. If I ever see you again, you're dead." Manold said goodbye. The saint knelt on the ground, raised her hand and shouted loudly, stopping. But the saint was too late. After the Manold entered the spacetime gate, the gate immediately radiated a terrifying power. The power slowly subsided. That power stabbed straight into the sky. After seeing this, the saint immediately slammed her hand on the ground. The saint angrily said, "Do you think I really want to do this, you crazy person?" The scene of the earth appears. In the room where Manold used to stay, purple power appeared coming from the window. After the explosion of power in the room, Manold returned to Earth. Meinl's name was Kim Minjun. Kim Minjun appeared in his room. Around Minjun's body, there was still an echo of strength that had not yet dissipated. Minjun knelt on the ground panting. Minjun's eyes widened in horror as if he had just gone through a life-and-death battle and thought, "I didn't expect to travel through a time-space portal. I didn't expect this damn thing, at any moment." After a while, Minjun slowly stood up. Minjun looked out the window thoughtfully for a moment. Minjun noticed the table. His phone was still plugged in, and was happy. Minjun walked towards the table. Minjun picked up the phone. Minjun held the phone in his hand and happily said, "I've missed this for so long." Minjun opened his phone. The wallpaper was Minjun's favorite game. Minjun said, "That's it, my phone, ki." Minjun immediately logged into the game, happily and excitedly shouted, "Ha ha ha, I'm finally back from that hell." Suddenly, something appeared on the phone. Minjun looked closely and wondered. A warning appears on the phone. Unable to connect to the network. Please check the connection status and try again. Later, under Minjun's house, a squad of armed soldiers searched around the neighborhood. All the soldiers pressed against the wall. A soldier in the lead asked, "It's going this way, right?" The soldiers following closely responded, "Yes, the observer has located it for us." The soldiers followed closely and asked the leading soldier, Corporal Choi In-ho, what all this nonsense was. Why did they mobilize ordinary soldiers like us? Choi In-ho replied, "How could that happen to you? As far as I know, go ask the executive officer." All the soldiers were leaning against the wall when they suddenly heard a noise. The soldiers turned to be alert. Corporal Choi In-ho took the lead and ran out. Other soldiers followed. As soon as he ran out of the alley, Choi In-ho raised his gun, ready to attack. Choi In-ho looked through the viewfinder and was surprised. Minjun walked on the street talking to himself. "So it's been 2 years since I was summoned to that hell. I'm still quite surprised to think that I can return here." Minjun continued, "Thanks to data metering, my phone still works, but I don't have anyone to contact. What's wrong with the internet in the neighborhood? I can't connect to the network." Minjun walked away shaking his phone frantically and said, "Meaning this place doesn't have Wi-Fi? Why isn't there a store?" The two soldiers saw Minjun walking leisurely like that and asked each other, "Hey, that is, he looks like a civilian." Minjun lamented, "How long have I been in Asgard? I think on Earth too, it's only been 2 years past." Choi In-ho saw this and asked his colleague, "I think the common people are restricted to this area. I don't understand how those stupid guards work." Choi In-ho called Minjun over. "Hey, young man, come over here." Minjun saw this and wondered why there were military soldiers in this residential area. Kim Minjun turned around and said to Choi In-ho, "Sorry, I just wanted to go over here for a bit." Saying that, Kim Minjun thought, "Well, I guess maybe they are doing situational training. They seem to be difficult higher than before, but don't they just need to practice walking around the neighborhood?" Choi In-ho shouted loudly warning Minjun, the young man, to run away. Minjun was bewildered, then turned his head to look. A mutated wolf was pouncing on Minjun. Minjun stood there as if he wanted to fight the wolf immediately. Minjun looked at the wolf that was rushing towards him ferociously. He frowned and calmly said, "This stupid dog doesn't even deserve me to punch it." Suddenly he realized something and thought, He looked down at his left hand and thought, my dark energy had completely disappeared. Then Minjun quickly grabbed the dog's head. He hit the ground hard. His strength was not average. He could handle the ferocious dog with one hand. When the soldiers saw that, their mouths opened wide, forming an A or an O, startled in surprise. The dog suffered such a physical impact that his mouth was bloody, his teeth fell out, and the ground was broken into bricks. Minjun calmly looked at the dog and said slowly, "Stupid dog." Minjun continued to handle the dog, making the others turn pale and scared. After finishing, his face was still stained with blood. He slowly stood up and said, "Do you think I'm just a useless guy who can't use magic due to lack of dark energy? Even if I become weaker, it's also not at a level where a scum monster like you can defeat me." Then he thought of himself in the past, training so hard that he could carry a big rock on his head under the whips. His face darkened and he thought, "This reminded me of the time I trained in Asgard." Suddenly he frowned, dark circles taking over half of his eyes, looking down lifelessly thinking, "But..." He looked at the dead dog with its mouth open on the ground, with blood surrounding it. He wondered, "Why did you appear in this world?" Minjun stood up with his left hand stained with blood, his right hand still holding the phone. His clothes were also stained with blood. The soldiers behind saw this and were startled to take a few steps back. Minjun turned half around and said, "Sorry, sir." He hadn't finished his sentence when the young soldier was startled and looked scared and said, "Don't come near here." Heading into the evacuation base 1 kilometer away. The car with a camouflage design was going very fast. A voice inside the car asked, "I don't understand why you went so far, young man." Minjun wiped his face and body while looking at the young soldier driving the car and continued, "But you could go to jail for that, because the commander told us not to overdo this, so you can go." The young soldier looked at Minjun and continued, "But, do you really not know what's going on these days?" Minjun smiled softly and replied, "Yes, I was abroad." Actually in his heart he thought, exactly in another world. Then the smile suddenly disappeared from his lips. He looked thoughtfully and thought, This is not the Korea I used to know. What has happened in these 2 years? Minjun thought about the monsters. The dungeon phenomenon appeared when I was about 7 years old. The monsters from the dungeon started appearing in real life. I remember there were soldiers fighting them like now. With the appearance of the dungeon, awakened superheroes appear. With abilities superior to normal people, join the newly formed Hunter Corps at the military base, and quickly eliminate monsters as soon as they appear. So, before being summoned by some crazy saint, Korea had no more danger in the residential area. Minjun said boredly, "Wait, is it possible?" He looked down at his phone that couldn't connect to the internet and thought, the most powerful fighter, this server hasn't completely disappeared, right? Minjun pressed repeatedly on that touchscreen, his lips pursed tightly, sweat was pouring down his face. He thought nervously, no, I went through a lot to come back and it's like this. I want to play powerful dungeon fighter, I really want to play that damn game, wow, this damn network, I want to see if the server is open again, hurry up. The young soldier was driving and looking at Minjun thinking, the whole world is in the same mess, but he doesn't know because he just came back from abroad, that's suspicious. Then he thought about Minjun treating the dog nicely earlier, sweat pouring down his face and thinking nervously, but I don't want to find out, I'm sure he has something personal. Suddenly Minjun's call made him out of his thoughts. Hey. Minjun said nervously, have the people moved to a safe place, like the game developers? Do you think they can still work during this time, like a game company, for example? What about the destroyed buildings, the server storage system not even working? What happened to create this this mess? He kept asking like that. The soldier replied, I'll tell you what I know, after all, I got an A+ in monster theory and dungeon theory in college. Minjun asked, do they still study such things in college now? The other person said, it's difficult to find schools that don't teach those subjects. The soldier continued looking at the driveway, explaining why the situation had become worse. Then he started telling the story. It was because of the strange phenomenon that started appearing in the dungeons 2 years ago. One day, dungeons started appearing more frequently. And it gets bigger and bigger, but the biggest problem is the number of giant monsters is increasing. They come from these strange dungeons. The soldier tightly grasped the steering wheel and said, because of that, the army could no longer control the dungeons, and the situation became worse and worse, leading to the need to quarantine some residential areas. From then on, the army used various measures to fight back, but we were short of forces. Minjun's eyes were filled with sadness and disappointment. Minjun thought, it's not like that, brother. Are those game companies still okay? I still want to play powerful dungeon fighter, how stupid. Then the soldier asked, how old are you now? Minjun replied, I think, I'm 21. Hearing that, the soldier replied, oh my god, that means you should join the army immediately. Half of your 20s are about to disappear into thin air. Minjun wondered and asked, half, 5 years for the Hunter Corps and 3 years in the army? The new soldier replied, because the situation is getting worse in recent years, all the armies are now because everyone has to serve for 5 years, not just the Hunter Corps. If you're 21, maybe you already have a registration letter. Minjun said in panic, 5 years is a lie. Then his face darkened thinking, wait, it's a bit serious isn't it? I want to play powerful dungeon fighter after returning and just to run away and heal. Minjun's face was red, his eye veins were bulging, he gritted his teeth and thought, but I have to enlist for 5 years right now, when I haven't even been able to connect to the server yet. Suddenly his phone vibrated, a text message from the state was sent. Minjun suddenly looked down at the phone in his hand. Reading the message, he thought, what the heck, announcing the enlistment date for X Division. Minjun said, tomorrow is enlistment day. Could this be spam? The timing is perfect. The new soldier smiled and said, it's true. This sound effect is so strange. Minjun still calmly said, it real. Then he panicked and said loudly, what, is it true? Why the hell would you just let him join the army without a physical examination? The scream startled the soldier. Minjun continued to ask indignantly, and why didn't he give a day's notice? The soldier immediately said, I told you, we don't have enough manpower, so you will usually do the physical examination right at the training center. And that announcement, you probably thought it was late. Why don't you go to the PC room near the evacuation base to check? Kim Minjun was stunned by the soldier's answer. His face opened wide, his mouth gaping open as he listened. Minjun was quickly in the computer room. playing games and thinking to himself, when my parents went missing, I just sat in the house and played games. So, I was summoned to Asgard without a single friend. Mankind's forgotten paradise. He sat and played fighting games. He thought with emotion, the PC room is the best, this divine game is still the same. How long has it been since I fought a boss? Minjun said while playing, I want to thank the owner of this establishment for opening the door during such a difficult time. Oh, a new item. He looked out and called the staff. Bring me a hot dog. Miss the employee looked at him thinking, how could he eat so much? Minjun finished eating the hot dog and placed the wooden stick on the table. He put his hand up to hold it and said, this. He looked at the computer screen and said, it's true. Minjun continued researching. After satisfying my gaming needs, I checked the new news on the internet. Everything that soldier said was correct. Even the enlistment date was announced by the military department. As the message said, it was tomorrow. If I possess the power from Asgard, I can erase all the dungeons. But for some reason, my body has completely lost its dark energy, which is the main source of energy for dark magicians. It's not that I can't defend myself now, I can still erase the demons myself. The dungeon is okay. Minjun leaned on his hands and thought with extreme tension. Then he said loudly, yes, that's what I should do. A bunch of people in the computer room were startled and turned to look at him. He looked at the computer screen and smiled happily and said, yes, great, just wait. I'll handle all of this. He smirked, looking like he was plotting something. The next day, at the military enlistment site, the atmosphere was extremely bustling, with people sending people off. Minjun leisurely ate the delicious grilled meat and walked over. He looked around and said, hey, there are so many people here. On this side, an old mother sees her eldest son off to join the army. On the other side were lovers saying goodbye to each other, sobbing. Kim Minjun leisurely walked past the bustling crowd holding a stick of meat. He smiled and said, everyone's in a bad mood. Suddenly an announcement rang out, please pay attention, all soldiers, go to the auditorium immediately. Minjun walked in with his hands in his pockets. They just said the army is not the same as before. Is it the same as Asgard? Me? Just wait, pack your weapons. Everyone followed the announcement and entered. A shout rang out in the room, stand up straight, you idiot. Are you here for a picnic? Hey, you idiot, why are you so slow? Everyone has already entered the queue. The platoon leader is still shouting, keeping his head straight. He was wearing dark glasses and scolded repeatedly. Couldn't he see the person in front? The guy next to him was equally scolding, move forward, just push people forward like your lives depended on it. The people below pushed and said, keep moving forward. Minjun suddenly looked, wow, they're still shouting at each other. Is this the best you can do? Kim Minjun thought about the previous miserable days of being tortured, whipping his body and being scolded continuously. Hey, I told you to do it, why didn't you listen to me? You look at the situation now and think, I did it. Forgot to kill that bastard before coming here. These guides are awesome. A Marine soldier whose name read Kim Sangsu spoke up, paying attention. He said, now, before we start, raise your hands if you want to join the Hunter Corps but haven't had the chance yet. As you know, the treatment of Hunter Corps is very different from other corps. The basic salary is from 3 million won. He said that but no one raised their hands. He continued asking, no one. Kim Sangsu said with sad eyes, it was just a formality, so don't worry. Now, he was talking and the person next to him interrupted, battalion commander. He pointed out to Sangsu that there was a volunteer. Sangsu suddenly asked, who? The other guy immediately called out. He was raising his hand, come here immediately. Kim Minjun immediately walked up and said, yes. It turned out that the arm belonged to Minjun. He stepped forward and put all his strength into his legs and jumped up. He jumped up so high that he almost hit the ceiling, making the enlisted soldiers gasp. The guides also looked up and exclaimed, terrified. Minjun landed in front of the wooden platform. Kim Sangsu looked at him in surprise. He quickly stood just 3 steps in front of him. Minjun laughed and said loudly, Kim Minjun would like to run for office. I want to join the Hunter Corps. Asgard, Northern Region, Forgotten Canyon. In a small cave. There's a voice deep inside. So what I'm saying is, this black magician's work has no end to its chaos. No character is worse. You know, this voice belongs to the man sitting on the body of a lava. An image of dark men dressed in black, with poison in their hands. Even though we have crazy skills, if we run out of dark energy, it's all for nothing. It will not naturally regenerate itself like the mana of regular mages. I have to regularly harvest it by defeating monsters with dark energy. Obviously, replenishing dark energy by using it never works, you know. And now a question for you. Manold pointed a finger up and smiled smugly at what he just said. What is the best method for a dark mage to replenish and retain their dark energy? There was no answer to Meinald's question, only the roaring sound of the fire. Meinald's face was a bit uncomfortable. He crossed his arms tightly. Around Manold, there were dozens of thugs. He said quietly, but no one answered him. Thump! The sound of the insect's claws digging into the cave's surface. Meinald's eyes glanced to speak. At times like these. Why not? The underground dungeon boss replied. Why are you coming out now? I think I'm going to die of boredom. Above Meinald's head slowly appeared the figure of a mother larva. Die. The larvae die. The green blood in the larvae's bodies spread all over the ground. The mother larva screamed. Purple fluid shot out from her mouth. Her eyes looked towards the Manold as if she wanted to eat her alive. Manold didn't show any signs of fear. He smiled a bit mockingly and asked, "That's your answer?" Bang! That larva immediately rushed towards Manold. Manold easily blocked it with one hand and said, "No, that's wrong. The answer is defeating the monster with maximum power." The larva's body just fell apart before the absolute power of Manold. Isgard, the pinnacle of dark magic, Manold, 645 days before returning to Earth. Now, he said his name is Kim Min-jun. The man took the glass of water and asked. Manold smiled and replied, "Yes." He gave Manold a glass of water and said, "You wait here, an army from the Hunter Corps will come." Manold took the glass of water and replied, "Thank you." The other man also took a sip of water and asked, "I see you are very enthusiastic. Do you have any special reasons for signing up for the Hunter Corps?" Because things are pretty bad these days, a lot of people return to the regular army despite having special abilities. Hearing what the other man said, Manold smiled and replied, "Yes, I do some business in the dungeon." Suddenly, the man was stunned and couldn't say anything because of what Manold said. Even Manold himself was helpless and didn't know how to explain. After a while, "Ha ha ha, you're so funny." Manold also laughed ha 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 and asked, "Right." The man said loudly, "What a funny guy, I won't charge the hall you destroyed ha ha ha." Manold drank a sip of water thinking to himself, "Stop laughing, old man. I'm not joking." All dungeons that appear in Korea are managed by the military, and the top priority regarding them and monster subjugation clearly belongs to the Hunter Corps. They include highly skilled individuals, where you have the ability to advance regardless of your length of service as long as you prove your abilities, without any limitations. If I join the Hunter Corps, I won't be able to enter the dungeons, right? I can clear most of them myself, and I'm sure I'll encounter monsters with dark energy again. When that happens with super fast progress, this is purely Minjun's imagination, reality may be different. The thoughts in his head made Manold show his bright white teeth and smile devilishly. He put the cup down on the table thinking, I can get 10 stars in 5 years and clear as many dungeons as possible, then the dungeon warrior force can relax and develop the fourth awakening. And I will become a high-paid public service hero. Manold touched his chin in satisfaction with the perfect plan he proposed when, knock, knock, knock on the door. The man just knocked on the door and came in. He raised his hand to the right side of his forehead and said, "Seriously, Hunter Corps Sergeant Lee Sung-ho reported." The male commander then walked up a few steps and pointed at Manold and said, "You're finally here. This is the recruitment we reported." The old commander's words made Manold a little suspicious and thought, the battalion commander was talking solemnly to a sergeant. Lee Sung-ho asked, "You really have hunter ability? If you have awakened as a hunter, you will be able to open a status window. Please tell me all your statistics." A question arose in Meinald's heart. What the hell happened to this person? Are all the Hunter Corps like that? Phew, okay. If they tell me to do something in the army, then I have to do it. Manold raised his hand. A blue chip appears. Come to think of it, they also have a status facility in Isgard. I hardly used it at the time because it only gives you the values of stats and abilities. Your ability, I wonder how it got here. Manold touched the image before his eyes. His face could not help but show admiration as he said, "Status window." His eyes opened wider and wider. Sergeant Lee Sung-ho said, What is it? Tell me what you saw. Meinol's face fell. He hesitantly replied, yes. It says there is an error. Sergeant Lee Sung-ho's face turned red, his eyebrows furrowed, and he said, hey man, are you kidding me? Somewhere in Gyeonggi-do, Hunter Corps Training Center. Battalion Command Office. In the room, a man put his hands behind him and said, I last saw you in Hwacheon, so it was about 10 years ago, right? I didn't think I would see you here again. First, why don't you sit down, Hunter Sun Yunseo? The girl that the man called Sun Yunseo had blue eyes and replied, I'm not a hunter yet. Like all the people who have enlisted here, I'm just a rookie. I may take it upon myself to say so, but if you called me here for my father, I do not expect special treatment during my training. The man opposite Sun Yunseo closed his eyes and said, I may have given you the wrong impression. This is a separate problem from men in general. Obviously she wouldn't receive any special treatment during her training. It was like the Hunter Corps was an easy organization. Didn't she already know that from her boss? Why? Yunseo's face darkened and she replied, it's because of me. That man immediately interrupted, such a famous recruit has enlisted. So there's no way I'm not interested in being the training commander here, right? You'll be busy in no time. So I wanted to say a few words of encouragement before that. It wasn't easy choosing to enlist as an ordinary soldier instead of an executive. We always lack people like you on the field. I thank you as a citizen of this country as well as a soldier. Hearing that, Yunseo's cheeks blushed and she immediately responded, thanking the commander for his support. She immediately thought to herself, oh, I'm so embarrassed. At this moment below, the sound of the car attracted the attention of the commander. He immediately laughed and said, come to think of it, I received a funny report today. You might get a really interesting comrade. Do you want to go with me to meet? This proposal makes Sun Yunseo feel confused. The car carrying Manhwa stopped at the foot of the tall building. Meinol's eyes looked up, his eyes also looked stupid. He thought, oh my god, how much tax money have they poured into this? This facility is no joke. As he walked, Meinol's head looked back and forth so much that he was dizzy. Sergeant Lee Sung-ho glanced and said, don't get too excited about recruiting. Your joining the Hunter Corps hasn't been decided yet. Because you are a special case, I will personally check on you. If it were not for the decision of the headquarters, I would not have dragged you here and went to Yongchang immediately. When all the tests are completed and you are confirmed as a liar, be ready to immediately enlist in the military police. Manhwa asked, yes, what is the test? Knock, knock. Sergeant Lee Sung-ho used his hand to knock on the red stone slab behind him and said, here. If you manage to move this even an inch, you'll pass. I'll give you 10 minutes. The sergeant finished thinking, well, if you have any talent as a hunter, prove it. This mineral is bloodstone, a byproduct created from dungeons. Not only is it extremely dense and heavy for its size, it is also exceptionally tough. At this size it won't even budge by a recruitment name. Manhwa walked away smiling and said, it's everything. I'm glad the test was so simple. Meinol's words made the sergeant startled and turned to look at him. Lee Sung-ho had doubts in his heart. There was no way to check other people's status books. There were always people trying to take advantage of the Hunter Corps with mediocre abilities. He jumped 5 meters high right off the platform, the error status window. It was all complete nonsense. Standing from the upper floor observing, the old commander said, it was him. He had apparently demonstrated incredible physical abilities in front of the battalion commander at the recruit training center, but the status of his status window showed errors. I have never heard of such a case as the training commander of the Hunter Army. I have high hopes to see how unique this recruit will be. Below, Manhwa got closer to the bloodstone. He reached out to touch it. This is the stuff that is scattered throughout the dungeons of Isgard, that ridiculously heavy mineral. At this size I can easily push it away. Manhwa smiled. He held his hand behind him, as if he wanted to punch a bloodstone. Sergeant Lee Sung-ho was skeptical. Hunter Sun Yunseo also found it difficult to understand this scene. Meinol's fist slowly rushed forward. A layer of storm was released. He thought, who knows, there might even be some dark energy in it. Bang! Crack! Suddenly, the bloodstone broke into small pieces under Meinol's punch. It would be bad if there was nothing. All three people saw Minjun single-handedly punching and breaking the bloodstone and stood still in surprise. Lee Sung-ho stood looking at the broken bloodstone and thought, bloodstone. He gritted his teeth and smiled, thinking, this is crazy. He looked at Minjun. He was looking at his hand, and yet, Sung-ho thought, what a weird guy. Minjun looked at the bloodstone after breaking it and thought, there's nothing inside. After entering the army for training, soldiers must physically train by jogging and climbing mountains, just like marching. Soldier number 121 named Nam In-hyuk was sweating profusely as he ran. Just breathing heavily. The soldiers running behind were no less competitive. Everyone was panting, sweating like a stream. Minjun of course had to run too. In-hyuk was panting while running and thinking, here, something is wrong. At first he joined the hunter army. Before joining the hunter army, I know training will not be simple. Because you will participate in real combat as soon as the training ends. You'll train like crazy for 4 weeks, like carrying sandbags from day one and climbing 6,000 steps uphill. And as if that wasn't enough, the teacher continuously urged while checking the completion time. The teacher of the Sergeant Hunter Corps Training Center was Lee Sung-ho, also known as the Evil Teacher. It's something everyone looks forward to. With such a rough method of physical training, you can only increase your stats a little. But that's what I think. In-hyuk looked at Minjun in panic. But what the hell happened to that bastard? He wondered. We are the problem. Minjun ran as fast as the wind, without breaking a sweat, as if movement were fun. Minjun ran like the wind gently passing through the stairs. He thought, his body felt very light. If I still had all my magic power, I would definitely fly. The hellish training of the Hunter Corps seems to be great, and compared to the tattered clothes in Isgard, the military uniform is exactly my preferred style. The food here is also truly overwhelming. And most of all, after the schedule ends, instead of taking turns on night duty, you will have free time. They said there's a PC room inside the facility that's on par with the outside configuration, and as long as you don't sneak out, they won't bother after completing the schedule. I thought they'd use any magic power. There's nothing left to escape from here if you don't like it. They give you practice and good food, pay you well, and give you game time. Minjun smiled happily and ran to the top of the mountain. He shouted excitedly, the Hunter Corps is the best, ha ha ha. The soldiers running behind stood still and looked at him running and said, he's running faster, how is that possible? It's really unbelievable. I don't think so. No, don't talk to me. Lee Sung-ho stood on the top of the mountain when he heard the sound of footsteps and reflexively turned to look. Turning around to see Minjun running like a god of war up to the destination, he panicked and said, what the hell? Minjun took his last step up the last step. Then he casually asked himself, that's it. Sung-ho looked at him and asked himself, Kim Minjun. Lee Sung-ho held a stopwatch in his hand. Who the hell was that guy? It usually took about an hour for new recruits, but he finished. Minjun leisurely looked at the scene and laughed with pleasure. The view from here was amazing. Minjun turned around to look at Sung-ho and smiled evilly. He came closer and looked around Sung-ho and said, did you say we would be rewarded with a ticket out if the completion time was less than 30 minutes? I wonder how much time it took me to complete it. Sung-ho clipped the paper between 2 fingers and held it out in front of Minjun. Minjun admittedly liked it and said, where should I use it? Sung-ho smiled and then breathed a sigh of relief. He looked down at the stopwatch at 21 minutes and 1 second and thought, had any new recruits ever received a ticket before? But high stats and good physical condition aren't everything. Minjun trains his muscles 1 second, 1 2, 1 2. Sung-ho looks at him and thinks, the most important thing is the ability to react and deal with monsters. I will observe you more closely, Kim Minjun. After climbing the mountain, the soldiers returned to their rooms. Everyone was tired and complained, oh my back, every day is like this, I'm going to die. Nam In-hyuk looked at the stats and said, my stats have increased, my endurance has increased by 1. The young soldier next to him said, wow, congratulations. What are your initial stats? I just have to check. The status window. Minjun looked at them and thought, did I hear correctly? Are they happy with just 1 extra stat point? Minjun blushed and thought, when I trained in Isgard, my stats increased by 10 every day. At that time, he was trained harshly. In order to give him stats, he was constantly beaten. His physical resistance naturally increased. 10. The guy next to the bed asked Minjun, you tried to get the ticket, when should you use it? Minjun replied, I'm not sure. The other 2 also added, I'm jealous of you. I hear the teacher said that before. They said that no one had ever gotten a ticket out from Sergeant Lee. Nam In-hyuk asked, do you often exercise? The guy next to you said, that's unbelievable. Minjun was surprised by those words. He thought, are these people laughing at me? When I was a black magician, people in Asgard didn't want to make eye contact with me because they thought it was a bad omen. Communication: it's not as bad as I thought. My friends are constantly chatting. The PC room is open. Are you planning to go? I don't have the energy to play anymore. Minjun heard his eyes light up and ran away. The PC room was open. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He ran and knocked his teammates away. Quickly going to the computer room, he felt satisfied with his passion when he sat at the table and held the computer mouse. Minjun looked at the ticking clock and thought, since it's 9 o'clock, I should have at least 2 hours of sleep. In Asgard, even 1 hour of sleep is considered a luxury, 2 hours is considered a huge reward. I will dispel my daily fatigue with these games. He plays games like crazy, making people around him ask each other, is he playing League of Legends? Are there still people playing that game? The next days, continuing to practice, Sung-ho took the lead while running and urging, don't increase the distance, maintain the speed. If there are any new recruits who cannot complete 40 kilometers in 2 hours, they will not be given breakfast, clearly. No? All said, yes, sir. After running, Minjun excitedly drank water and boasted that he had reached the maximum level of 10 yesterday. The newbie next to him asked, wow, Kim Minjun, you didn't even sweat a drop. Minjun smiled and said, just going for a walk. The other guy said again, but you really play games all the time and sleep 2 hours to 4 this week. Are you a monster or something? Minjun replied, monster? I was even planning to bring water to share with my dear comrades. I guess you don't need it. Then he poured the water down, causing the other soldier to gasp and say, I just said that you have just monstrous physical strength, sir, my beloved comrade. The other soldiers heard the water and turned around greedily, saying, water, water. Those people surrounded Minjun and opened their mouths to ask for water. Please give us holy water. Minjun gave them water and laughed. You guys are like chicks. The sound of footsteps coming to the front of the podium. He spoke loudly, paying attention. Attracting everyone's attention, he said, the lieutenant is very disappointed in all of you. Even though it is the last training session, you are the weakest squad of all, so the lieutenant is very disappointed. Minjun looked at him and thought, why does he refer to himself in the third person? The lieutenant continued, if you guys were deployed to fight after training, I guess half of you would die within a month. Half? You guys think I'm lying? With that kind of mindset, do you think you'll be able to complete the final stage of training, the custom dungeon training? Wait a minute, what is custom dungeon training? Usually the dungeon will disappear after you defeat all the monsters and kill the boss, but sometimes, there are dungeons that still exist. In that case, it will become a transformation dungeon, and change the internal structure every day, and become a great training base, to experience all kinds of different environments in the dungeon. The actual training in the conversion dungeon is custom dungeon training. The new recruits looked at each other and discussed, the infamous custom dungeon training, should we do it now? We're done. The lieutenant looked at them with a smirk and said, they're agitated, well, they have to maintain this level of tension. It would be good to control new recruits as if they were racing horses. When they need discipline, you don't have to tighten the reins. And when they are stressed, I will comfort them with carrots. Then he said, don't be discouraged. If you are wise, it will be okay. And the person with the highest score will receive a 3-day, 2-night vacation ticket. He thought to himself, now is the time to get excited. The crowd looked at him with his words just now. He said loudly, did you hear that? Vacation ticket, 3 days and 2 nights, don't you want to go out? Doesn't this make your blood boil? He thought, what the hell is wrong with these guys, do they want to stay here until they die? He tried to convince everyone with that seemingly huge reward, but no one said anything. Only, he saw Minjun's eyes bright and thought, why is there only one person to criticize? Minjun said, great. The sky is clear and blue, white clouds drift peacefully, and the view on the high mountain is truly breathtaking. The new soldiers were brought to the dungeon. Everyone was surprised and gradually scared. What? Why is it so big? Minjun calmly scratched his ear. Standing in front of the huge dungeon door, everyone opened their mouths and said, is that a dungeon? The day custom dungeon training begins. One soldier asked, what do they want us to do in there? The guy next to us replied, I think camping. Behind the army camouflage patterned vehicle is coming. The car passed quickly past the two soldiers standing there. creating a cloud of dust that made the two quickly retreat and cough. The other boy looked at it and wondered, "What are 2 dots and 5 doing here?" "That's a military truck weighing 2 dots and 5 tons. Minjun looked over and huffed. The faces of the people behind him seemed scared. Inside the truck, there were bright eyes. Everyone looked scared and said nothing. Were they monsters? Or what was in the truck that night? Purr, those things are. Hound. The 3 guys next to Manold saw the hunting dogs baring their teeth and were so scared that their bodies tilted their heads to the side. Manold, on the other hand, appeared very calm. He put his hands in his pockets and sat down on the ground, quickly said, "This is the first time I've seen him so close." Manold thought about the image of 2 animals he had often seen before. Why were they so afraid? They were equivalent to Maltese dogs or Chihuahuas. At this moment, a man came and shouted loudly, "You rookies, why are you so afraid? Those are the monsters you need to confront." Hearing that, a rookie asked in fear, "You want me to face them?" The male commander said, "You will form a team of 4 recruits to enter the transformed dungeon. All teams will fight with a hunting dog for 1 hour and return here. If you're injured, increase your core strength. If you're scared, use your mind to focus on fighting him. Is everyone clear?" Everyone stood at attention and shouted loudly, "Yes, we understand." "Then go quickly," evil teacher Lee Sung-ho aka said with his hands on his hips. "Go up one by one." This is the exclusive protective armor of the MYD-2 Hunter Corps, produced for the purpose of body mechanical protection, extremely rough and heavy design. As soon as he put on the MYD-2, the bald guy immediately said, "Don't they give us anything else besides this?" The guy next to him exclaimed, "I think my leg is about to break." On the contrary, the Manold picked it up. "I thought to myself, this thing is not comfortable and has no effect other than protecting the body. This thing costs 50 million. They must have really used it carefully because it's so expensive. I can smell their sweat and passion. What an item with a great aura. I don't like it." Manold immediately went up to the lieutenant and asked, "Lieutenant, I have a question. If we can defeat the wolves quickly, can we take off these clothes or not?" The lieutenant, a little surprised, then turned around and asked, "Wow, why are you so arrogant?" When the lieutenant turned around, he exclaimed, Is it you? If you want. But remember, this is a team training session. You can't just excel alone. Let's see if our rookie first place Kim Minjun can stand by his teammates or not." Manold thought, 1 team training session. The bald rookie behind Manold held a small knife and said, "How can we confront hunting dogs with only this?" The guy next to him quickly replied, "We need to have a plan. Manold touched his chin, his face thoughtful. "It's simple. I just need to tell them how to defeat the hound, right?" Immediately turned to the 2 rookies in front of him and said, "Hey, listen to me. I will present my plan." The rookie asked in surprise, "What is your plan?" Manold said, pulling his arms forward, "The hound will jump towards you to kill you. When they do, don't be afraid and grab their legs and break their back in half. If the gap is that wide, they will die, but if it is still alive, then fold it in the opposite direction and tear it apart, like people tearing kimchi." "Okay." Meinol's plan made the 2 guys in front of him look confused. What the hell were they thinking? Manold said. "Let go." The sergeant's voice rang out immediately. Teacher Lee Sung-ho aka climbed up and took off the lock on the iron door. The growling sound of the hounds were continuously hissing. Suddenly, the hunting dogs rushed out like lightning, their eyes shining brightly in the middle of the day. This group of hounds suddenly turned towards the dungeon. The new recruits saw this scene and said in surprise, "They went to the dungeon instead of attacking us." The Manold immediately said, "They were taken away all day and their house just appeared. Why don't they go home?" "Yes." Meinol's explanation made the other 2 guys happily say, "Oh, that makes sense. I think it makes a lot of sense. How do you know the psychology of those monsters so well? Please tell me." Suddenly, a commander and 2 eunuchs walked up to the 3 Meinolds and said, "You guys are joking and laughing on this sacred training ground. Do you want to die?" "Okay, Lieutenant, it's decided. The first team to enter will be you guys." As soon as I heard it, everyone was scared to the point of sweating except Manold and exclaimed, "We are the first team." The teacher immediately held up his stick, shouted, and entered. "Come in." 4 people led by Manold contain all the emotions: anger, fear, doubt, optimism. "There is only 1 step left to enter the dungeon," Manold said. "Well, it will be fine. if I can take off this heavy and dirty clothes as soon as possible, I will welcome them with open arms. Expand. Are you sure? Beep. The call is transmitted. The commander said, the training team has begun. Prepare. Control the situation if things go beyond control and the recruits are in danger. Inside the ice prison, 2 prison officers received the commander's request and immediately responded, understood, Lieutenant. The teacher immediately noticed through the crack in the rock. He immediately saw Minol's group. Corporal Kim Ho-jun, the new recruits have arrived. There is a team of 4 people. There are no other parties. The teacher behind asked, is there anything else? Something made the teacher open his eyes wide and look. That name goes with him, Kim Minjun. The teacher thought to himself, are you here, Kim Minjun? The special object that needs attention, the rookie who showed the most outstanding strength in that round. His scores over the past 4 weeks have been excellent, but will he be able to stand out in this dungeon? There were 2 hunting dogs running quickly along the cliffs behind the Minols. Minold felt it and thought to himself, are they ready to go? They are definitely very impatient. Gruer, I could end it all by breaking their heads when they pounce, but my other teammates don't have any fighting experience, right? Minold made a stop sign and said, they are coming here. The rookie walking behind asked, what is coming? Minold smiled and said, what do you think if it's a group, screaming, the hunting dogs are madly coming? Minol's 3 teammates immediately exclaimed in fear, they are here. On the contrary, Minold was not embarrassed at all. He clenched his hands into fists and said, don't be afraid, the armor protects you. Ours is very sturdy. I think I'll be the one to go first. You guys, who wants to go in first? The 3 hounds divided into 3 sides to attack the Minolds. The hunting dog in the middle chose Minold as the target. It immediately rushed forward and bit Minold. Minold then gently moved aside. He raised his fist and asked, is it you? Bang! Minold's punch immediately made the hunting dog lie flat on the ground. The hunting dog's mouth opened wide, its tongue also stuck out. It was officially killed by death. Having just finished dealing with a hunting dog, Minold noticed a cry for help from his teammates. Minold came to relieve the siege, when the hound noticed. Bang! A kick from Minold immediately sent the hound flying. Hit the wall hard and of course it died immediately. Minold said, if they bite you, you have to fight back. They will think you are small prey if you keep being afraid. The bald rookie immediately replied, yes, I understand. Hearing that, Minold asked, why did you using honorifics when we are teammates? The bald man quickly said, sorry. If the situation from before had happened, the 2 of you would have died. We outnumber them. So let's use it as an advantage and put pressure on them. That's right. If you put pressure on them, they will be terrified. Keep pressing them and wait for them to calm down. Standing to the side, the 2 instructors observing the battle said in disbelief, is he really just a rookie? Are you talking about Kim Minjun? Normally, the rookie's fear would keep them from doing anything. But with Kim Minjun's guidance, they were freed from fear. Could that guy be the Hunter Corps sergeant who reincarnated the day before he enlisted? The guy next to him observed and replied, such things only happen in novels. Anyway, he not only tried to solve them with his strength, but he has the ability to lead by encouraging his teammates and cooperating with them. So Kim Minjun deserves top marks. The remaining names will receive average scores. After finishing dealing with the hunting dogs, those 2 teachers immediately came out and said, good job. You guys go this way. On the way, Minold asked, can I get my vacation yet? The official said, shut up. Do you think we will tell you? Minold said, do you guys care about the new recruits? You guys are like a big sundeer. The name sundeer makes the teacher only listen but not understand anything about it. The footsteps of the leader suddenly stopped. Small pieces of stone in the dungeon suddenly fell. This situation makes the teachers also feel uncomfortable. That's Corporal Kim Ho-jun. The teacher behind him quickly said, quickly turning on the radio to broadcast outside. The bald rookie asked, did something unexpected happen? Was there an earthquake? Minold said, it wasn't an earthquake. It's a transforming dungeon. It's just transforming for the time being. The bald man continued asking, so what will happen? Wait. Exit. It's closing on its own. Kim Minjun stood before the attack of the Dark Hound and said, anyway, I'm glad to see a familiar face. Having finished speaking, Minjun went down and said, now. Thank you for the meal. As soon as he finished speaking, Minjun punched the Dark Hound and flew it 10 meters away. After that attack, The dark hound lost consciousness. Only a few teeth remained. His body radiated dark energy. Minjun recognized it and said, "This is your dark energy." The blood of the dark hound also followed the dark energy that covered the cave. Kim Minjun exclaimed, "The smell of blood was still as disgusting." Dark energy was thick in the cave. Minjun saw that and raised his hand to say, "Huge dark energy poured out after it died. That's why dark hounds are so difficult to defeat, because its blood is poisonous. When normal people continue exposed to it, their skin would rot." After that, Kim Minjun immediately absorbed the rich dark energy in the cave. When absorbing that power, Kim Minjun's left hand bulged and many red blood vessels appeared. Minjun said, "Of course, excluding the black magician." At this moment, red veins also appeared on Minjun's face. At the exit, the recruits and preceptors saw the exit closed and panicked. One recruit asked loudly, "What the hell is going on?" The teacher picked up the walkie-talkie and said 2 words, "Damn." Kim Minjun normally looked at the rookies and teachers in panic and thought, "I guess it's too late to leave now. The exit is getting smaller quickly." Minjun thinks, "This is not good." The teacher held the walkie-talkie and shouted loudly, "Corporal Kim Hojun." The walkie-talkie was not working. The dungeon changed too quickly. Hojun asked, "It would take more than a month for the structure inside the dungeon to change again. Why, like this again?" Then, the officer holding the radio said, "Let's evacuate the kids to a safe place first." Instructor Hojun approached the 3 recruits kneeling on the ground and said, "As you can see, there was an unexpected incident in the dungeon." Hojun continued, "But don't worry, we'll wait here for an hour and see if the connection opens again or not." After hearing this, the 3 new recruits were talking. "Really? We only need to wait an hour to get out? That's Oto's. I thought we would be stuck here. I was so scared." Hojun heard his father say that and smiled awkwardly. "Ha ha. I bet the people outside are also looking at the situation. The lieutenant will come up with a suitable solution. So all we need to do is to wait calmly instead of worrying." Kim Minjun heard the teacher say that and whispered, "Is that so?" Minjun looked around thinking that the reason they continued to train here was because they were sure that this dungeon would not have any unexpected situations like this. An unexpected, ominous situation when the entrance to the dungeon was suddenly closed. The teacher held the walkie-talkie and tried to communicate for a while but to no avail, so he went to Kim Hojun and called, "Corporal Kim Hojun." Kim Minjun saw the 2 instructors whispering to each other and immediately thought that, as he thought, the instructors were aware that the situation didn't seem too good. They reacted calmly, but maybe there was no real instructions. What's the point in situations like this? The officer holding the walkie-talkie whispered to Kim Hojun, "Corporal Kim Hojun, you're going." Hojun stopped. "You. Wait, go somewhere else." Kim Minjun thought, "If this dungeon turns into a closed dungeon, it might be harder to defeat than I thought, but it's just a complicated situation, not the worst, because I have here." After leaving to another place, the 2 teachers talked to each other. The teacher held the walkie-talkie and said, "Yes, this is the worst-case scenario." Kim Hojun thought and said, "I'm sure you already know, this dungeon has turned into a closed dungeon." The remaining teacher heard that and was startled and asked, "What?" The remaining clerics heard about the closed dungeon and suddenly gasped and said, "If it is a closed dungeon, oh wow, is it really a closed dungeon? Really? No one warned about this?" Hoju immediately asked, "You bastard, don't you have any idea what you were going to say just now?" Kim Hojun explained to the remaining teacher, "There are 2 cases when the dungeon entrance disappears. The first is the dungeon disappears. The dungeon will automatically disappear after being defeated. And in the second case, the dungeon is closed. The gate disappears when an outsider enters. When we were in the dungeon it had transformed into a closed dungeon. Which odds mean the gate was gone, and surely more monsters would appear. The only way to escape the dungeon closure is defeating each monster in the dungeon." The teacher asked Kim Hojun, "That is?" Kim Hojun replied, "Yes, there is no way to receive support from outside." Teacher Kim Hojun thought, 4 new recruits with no actual combat experience and 2 teachers. The 6 of us have to conquer this dungeon. Kim Hojun turned around and thought to everyone, "Just as I thought." Since informing him of the real situation, they all became tense. Then, Kim Hoju looked at his hands and thought, "We don't know what monsters have appeared. If we are unlucky, this could be the end for all of us, but we can't just sit still, we must keep moving while we are still full of energy." it would be better if the teachers were fully equipped. With this situation, just the goblins will be enough to destroy our group, because it will take me more than 10 minutes to defeat one. The most feasible and realistic plan is. Kim Hojun turned his head to look at the new recruits and thought, take advantage of the protective suits that the new recruits were equipped with, those heavy and stupid suits. If you use defense and let the new recruits go first, the priest can defeat the monsters when they are held back by them. But until now, these bastards have trusted us and endured the grueling training process, acting as seniors while using their juniors as meat shields. My self-esteem won't allow it. After walking for a while, a new recruit walking in the middle of the line said, we're already in the last week of training and we still have a dungeon incident. Suddenly Kim Minjun noticed something. Kim Minjun stopped and looked around. The last teacher saw Minjun looking around and was surprised. The teacher asked Minjun, is there a problem, rookie Kim Minjun? Suddenly there was a loud scream from the front line. Kim Minjun and the teacher immediately noticed. The new recruit near the end was scared. Kim Hojun, who was in the lead, was having difficulty breathing. He hugged his neck. The rookie in the lead shouted loudly, teacher. Kim Hojun foamed at the mouth and fainted. Big veins appeared on his face. The rookie leader saw this and screamed in fright, ah. The teacher in the back saw that the teacher Kim Hojun in the front was like that, so he quickly ran over and called. Corporal Kim Hojun and Kim Minjun saw this and stopped the teacher in the back from running up. Don't run. But it's too late. Minjun said, now I can run. There was no way to save him. As soon as the teacher at the end ran to Kim Hojun, he immediately collapsed. The recruit saw this and called out loudly to ask, teacher, are you okay? Kim Minjun walked from the end and told the 3 remaining rookies, everyone, to stay back. If you come any closer, you will face the same situation. Kim Minjun approached the 2 magistrates but didn't react like them. Minjun observed the 2 magistrates and whispered, it's not serious, they just fainted, I'm not surprised. Kim Minjun raised his head and looked ahead thinking, I think I smell a familiar smell. Minjun picked up 2 spears and threw them at the 3 new recruits behind him. Hey, catch them. Then Minjun said, don't follow me, just stand near the exit. A new recruit is worried, where are you going? Stop, it's dangerous, even the teacher has fainted. Minjun still went deeper despite the rookie's warnings, you might die, are you crazy, come back, Kim Minjun. Kim Minjun ran fast and thought to himself, I'm so excited I could die, it really exists on Earth. The dark energy was the reason why the 2 teachers fainted. Minjun smiled happily and thought, it's not surprising that the awakened teacher also fainted. Even the Asgard people are covered with a special protective layer, to protect them from dark energy before facing the monsters. It is more dangerous for the average person, however. For black magicians, dark energy is equivalent to a charger for a dead phone. After a while of running, Kim Minjun ran to the place where the dark energy was coming from. Minjun shouted loudly, here it is, the source of dark energy is billowing. Minjun entered the place where the dark energy was emitting. The stalactites had turned from green to purple. Minjun stood on a stalactite and observed, thinking, it's so quiet, I can't find any traces of monsters around here. However, Kim Minjun raised his head and looked above his head. The dark hound was clinging to a large stalactite to hide high up. Kim Minjun raised his head and said, do you think you can hide in front of the dark magician with such a strong smell of dark energy? Kim Minjun touched his chin and said, I didn't think I'd see you here, dark hound. Dark hounds, of course they cannot be equated with dogs because of their name. They are a species that is completely overwhelming compared to regular hunting dogs. I think the first time I met this bastard was about a year after I was summoned to Asgard. I almost died because I had never seen such a monster on Earth and I tried to attack it. Of course, it has no effect on the dark magician. Manold thought, it felt so exciting to absorb dark energy for the first time after such a long time. I think I was about 5% charged. But how come the dark hounds that can usually only be found in Asgard are present in a place like this? I was thinking that the monsters on Earth had absorbed dark energy. But judging by the way the instructors reacted, this was probably the first time this had happened, and there was no mention of dark energy or this bastard during the monster training at the center. The possibility that dark hounds can move between dimensions is non-existent. It can only be the result of people like me, who have reached the pinnacle of dark magic. Or by saints who can use God's power. It is not a skill that anyone can use. Am I thinking too much? This has really never happened before. So where is its body? I needed it to make a report. I found it. His teacher was still lying unconscious. The calls from outside, the tour guide. A moment later his eyes opened a little. Hey, I think his eyes just opened a little. Really? No. Wake up, soldier. Suddenly the two teachers jumped up in surprise and shouted, "What?" Both teachers looked around and quickly said, "Is everyone okay? What the hell happened? Is anyone injured?" The two rookies in front said, "We are all fine." However, Kim Minjun himself went deeper into the dungeon. The teacher heard that and immediately exclaimed in panic, "What?" So what happened was, after listening to Meinl's story, the teacher grabbed the bald rookie, pulled him up and down, and said, "So did that bastard act like that?" The rookie was stunned by him and replied, "Yes, that's right." The teacher gritted his teeth and thought, how dare he act like that in this dangerous situation? His attitude alone is enough to fire him immediately. But I have the authority to do so. Can I say that? Instead of protecting the rookie, I fainted. No, I shouldn't waste any more time thinking nonsense like this. Now I need to go rescue Kim Minjun immediately. At this moment, another new recruit pointed towards the cave and said in a dazed voice. The tour guide looked. In front of everyone was the image of Manold carrying that hunting dog forward and asking, "Oh, everyone okay?" The two teachers also gasped when they saw it and asked, "What the hell? Is that a hunting dog?" The teacher behind him pointed and said, "Yes sir, but doesn't it look a bit different from normal?" Manola dropped the dead wolf on the ground and said, "Oh, please take a look at this damn thing." The two magistrates went up to the hound to look at it and said, "Did this wretched thing knock us out, I think?" Along with the shocked state of the two teachers, the three new recruits were also scared and exclaimed, "What the heck? Did Kim Minjun defeat such a big monster by himself? If the one we defeated was of this class, light, this one must be a heavy one." While Manold was looking at everyone, suddenly a blue light shone. Its gate has opened. As he was about to leave, the teacher came and tapped Manold on the shoulder and asked, "Kim Minjun, did you really defeat that hunting dog yourself?" Manold didn't respond but just nodded. This made the teacher look at Manold with a different eye. He said, "I understand." Then the teacher immediately turned to the teacher who was with him and said, "Escort the new recruits out. I will follow." As assigned, he replied, "Yes, sir." The three rookies accompanying Manold slowly walked out. In the dungeon, only the teacher and Manold were left. The teacher breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Kim Minjun, once you get out I want you to report everything to the lieutenant in detail." Manold replied, "Okay." The teacher took off his hat and continued, "Don't forget anything, including how useless your tour guides are. After all, we were defeated and the new recruits had to fend for themselves. We had no defense even if we were sent to military prison. Well, thanks to you everyone is safe. I appreciate that." The official's voice was a bit formal, causing Manold to only rub his head and say, "You make me feel so embarrassed." The Mandarin put on his hat and replied, "Well, as a man, I have to admit that when things take a turn for the worse, we should go back anyway. Damn, now I don't know how to write about the thing that made me pass out. I'm probably going to lose sleep again tonight." Manold was the only one left in the dungeon, with a happy expression on his face as he said, "Being praised at the end of the training week like this, it's time for me to go out, right?" Suddenly something flashed in front of Meinl's face, making him confused. "The error has been fixed." Manold said a little incredulously, "What the hell? Has the error been fixed? Anyway, what kind of error is it?" "This stupid system too. You're so ridiculous. Kim Minjun, founder of the Lumi Nuna Church, is my favorite character. Strength 60, Agility 60, Endurance 60, Magic Stat 10, Skills Possessed, Corrupt." Manold pointed at the screen and said angrily, "Something is strange, is that all? Why the hell is it in the status window? Lumi Nuna Church is my favorite character. Lumi is a character in the powerful dungeon fighter game. When I reached the peak of black magic while in Isgard, I created that church as a joke to chase away those crazy people. Those people followed me like stalkers. In the end it only brought in more crazy people." Manold looked thoughtful again and said, "It seems like I have weakened a lot. My stats are much worse than I thought. After my return, when I noticed that all my evil energies had disappeared, I thought about some kind of punishment for traveling between dimensions. But from my endless pile of skills, I only have one left. so why is it still a low-level skill? The effects of corruption must be a stomach ache. Damn, this isn't a web novel, it's so absurd it makes me want to vomit. I can't achieve any of my goals if things continue like this, but still. I'm still the same person who reached the highest level of black magic when I ruled on Asgard, because I was able to reach the absolute level in the past. It's not like I can't do it again. Right now I have a clear goal to restore my strength as soon as possible, because the game company's development is delayed by monsters. Thinking in his head, Manold took a deep breath and said, "It can be done. This is nothing compared to the time in Asgard when the only thing I could do was endure." Finally Manold slowly walked towards the gate. Just wait, game company. That day the whole training center fell into chaos. Due to the fact that the dungeon's gate was closed during training, due to the fact that the lieutenant did not give any clear instructions. While the instructors were helpless, due to a series of unpredictable events, the new recruits, who were supposed to be promoted to the rank of soldiers and enjoy the freedom of being temporarily discharged from the army, right again. In a room with about a dozen new recruits, these guys seemed quite tired and said, "We must be cursed. When will we stop being stuck in this waiting time? With a crazy chain of events, this happened last week of training, they should have at least let us watch TV or something. This is a waste of time." Rookie number 060 approached Rookie 034 and asked, "Did Kim Minjun really catch that hunting dog himself?" Number 034 laughed and said, "It's so big, I thought it was a cow, not a dog, it's my first time seeing it." 060 asked a little in disbelief, "Really? Don't you think Kim Minjun will be able to be promoted to sergeant in the next 2 years? Haven't you heard about the Hunter Bureau's promotion exam? I heard that most of them are assigned to be non-commissioned officers. Even though I've been there for 5 years, it seems like there are even hunters who are classified as first-class privates, which sounds sad." In the room of the Army Corps, Manold raised his hand to his forehead and said in a military stance, "Private Kim Minjun is here to report. There are currently 2 people in here. One is in a greeting pose saying, 'Seriously, come in,' and the other is holding his head down and looking up at Manold, not saying anything. You can leave now." "Yes, sir." The young man opened the door and walked out, leaving only 2 people in the room. The commander smiled and asked, "If a senior does not check the dungeon properly, he must be punished, is that right?" Manold was also surprised by the commander's question and said, "Private Kim Minjun reported, 'Yes, sir.'" He then slapped his hand on Manold's shoulder and said, "Now without further ado, Private Kim Minjun, you were called here because I have to tell you something. As the person who achieved the highest score, I have a special invitation for you. This proverb implies, certain people are superior to the rest. He's really not an ordinary person. He didn't expect that he would still be blessed to witness such a scene after living to this age. Who knew there would be a crane? Just perform above average to look like chickens. It's truly a national loss to classify a genius like this as a regular military rank, especially when they need additional personnel. Let's see." The thought was already in his head. The old commander put his chin in his hands and said, "I heard you want to be promoted as soon as possible, but according to our rules, private soldiers are not allowed to take the promotion exam for another year. However, if you were granted an exception, that would be a different story." The commander's voice was changing from calm to speaking loudly. "If you volunteer to join the Hunter Corps in Cheolwon, Gangwon Province, I will use my training command authority to grant you this exception. If you go there, you won't have to wait another year. How about that?" The commander's attitude made Manold temporarily unable to say anything. The old commander also calmed down. He grinned and thought to himself, although he really wants to be promoted, isn't Cheolwon a bit too much? I'm worried that this exception is not worthy of his ability. Manold stood thoughtfully for a moment, thinking in his head, if it was Cheolwon. 104th Division, Invisible Hunter Corps, my comrades once told me to avoid that place at all costs. The weather is cold, the snow falls constantly and densely, but it is not boring because dungeons and monsters will always suddenly appear. It is the most interesting place in the rear. Isn't that wonderful? As long as I get promoted, it doesn't matter where I get my experience, even if it's an exception. It's not that simple. Above all, they have a lot of dungeons. Isn't that the most suitable condition for me? Especially considering my job. I want to get promoted at all costs. The higher the military rank, the scope of activities the bigger and more obvious it is. There's no better way to get an exception than completing dungeon quests. The plan was complete. Manold immediately replied, "I will go. Meinl's determination made the commander breathe out and say, "Okay, then tell me your conditions." "Wait. What?" Manold said loudly. "I'm going to Cheolwon." A few days later, early in the morning, a large number of new recruits and generals were standing in the courtyard. The general named Choi Jinsub Rocker stuck his head out of the car door. He cried like a child and said loudly, "Kim Minjun, you have to call me when you get to the base, you know." Manold stood outside and said, "That's all for now, but why don't you contact me?" The young man inside the car replied, "It's clear, I'll do it, well whatever." General Choi wiped his tears and his nose started running again. He rubbed his eyes and said, "But are you really going to Cheolwon? Why would you volunteer to go to a place that everyone wants to avoid?" Meinl's mouth smiled and replied, "How can you understand? You don't know. My life goal is crazy." Choi asked, "What is that?" "Like reaching the maximum level 100 times, Manold smiled and said, "As of yesterday I have reached the 30th maximum level, so 100 is nothing. You are right, it's really crazy. Remember to call me." Choi's last words when his car took off. Manold took a deep breath. "Let's see. The loudest guy has finally left the base. Why am I still alone?" The sound of a car is gradually approaching Meinl's place. Suddenly, the car stopped. Click. Someone opened the car door and got out. Calling, Kim Minjun. A tall and muscular guy. On his face there are a few scars probably left by fighting. His name is Kim Min-ji. Standing in front of him, Manold feels so small. Kim Min-ji said, "I kept you waiting for a long time. Because of the snow, it took me quite a while." Manold replied blankly, "Private Kim Minjun, no problem." Manold thought, "Snow? What month is it and there is snow?" Kim Minjin he turned his leg. Then assume the standard military posture and say, "Then we will depart for the Corps, get in the car." Manold sat alone in the back of the car. The only thing he could feel was the sound of the wind. Manold thought to himself, "I will truly begin my life as a soldier when I arrive at the base. Whether the training is harsh or having to fight monsters often is not a problem for me, but one thing makes me worried. Bullying. What if I end up in a miserable situation like on TV shows? I don't have the patience to endure that kind of thing right now. Sigh, but I guess I'll still have to endure it. If I cause trouble with my superiors just once, I will be sent to military prison like a normal soldier. The space around this place is covered with quite a thick layer of snow. Even the name sign now has no words." Meinl's face looked stupid too. Hunter Corps, first sign welcoming Manold, Cheolwon, Gangwon Province, Hunter Corps, 104th Division, 2nd Battalion. Manold went with Kim Min-ji. As he walked, Meinld's eyes paid attention to everything around him. His veiny hand grabbed the handle and he opened it. As soon as the door was opened, Kim Min-ji immediately walked in and said, "That's a rookie. Teach him." What catches Meinld's eye is the sight of someone cleaning the TV, someone lying down, someone taking out the trash, but all eyes are focused on Manold. Immediately two guys with bright eyes said, "Who is a rookie?" "What is your name?" Manold said, "Private Kim Minjun." Hearing that the two guys in front of him shouted loudly, "If you are Kim Minjun then you must be a super soldier as rumored. The bastard has defeated a hunting dog." This opens the door for new recruits to leave. Contrary to the attitude of the other two young men, Manold cautiously said to himself, "Are those two leaders of the dormitory? They were looking at me with joy as if they had just found a toy." The young man in the blue and purple shirt asked, "Your score is so high that you can choose to go to the rear guard. Why did you come here?" Manold said, "I heard that the rear is the best place to gain combat experience and the fastest route to promotion." After hearing Meinld's words, those two guys did not understand Meinld's intention. The orange-haired guy grinned and said, "You're crazy. Do you have any sisters?" "I don't." "What about a girlfriend?" "I've been single since birth. I'm so unlucky, so show us your talent." Manold thought, "My talent? If I show it off, will they go away?" Then Manold raised a finger and said, "I will demonstrate one-arm push-ups." Immediately the other two angrily responded, "Hey, what kind of talent is that? We can do that shit all day. Don't be angry, Sergeant, just let him show it off, go." After laughing for less than 3 breaths, these two guys began to feel unable to believe their eyes. Meinld's index finger was planted on the ground. Meinld's whole body stood upright like a stake. Both guys said, "Upright? You can do vertical push-ups. Is there anyone in our platoon who can do that?" "That bastard probably can," that bastard is a sergeant." From outside, there were footsteps approaching the Minol's room. Shining eyes and a voice like a roaring lion. "Hey, get out." The two talkative guys pointed their fingers and said, "I'm sorry, that bastard." "Hey, that voice." Lee Sung-ho walked into the room. The two people standing at the door immediately asked, "Why are you pretending to be exhausted when you were only sent to be a tour guide? And you don't get to go on vacation with the kids? It's so nice to have a break. How many days has it been?" Sung-ho didn't answer and we both scoffed. "What a bastard. He didn't even respond to us." Lee Sung-ho heard them making fun of him and got angry. "Okay, 4 days. Don't bother and leave me alone." The two people standing at the door heard that and left and said, "You're a dead party and we're about to leave." A red-haired guy raised his middle finger and said, 4 days is too much. Eat this, bastard." Lee Sung-ho saw them leaving and said, "They keep irritating me. But it's not like I'm sneaking around." Kim Minjun standing to the side saw that and silently thought, "They've left." Lee Sung-ho walked over to his bed and lay down. Sung-ho picked up his phone to look. A warning sounded on the phone. "As you can see, the volcanic dungeon has a very high natural temperature that can cause immediate damage." While Sung-ho was looking at his phone, the other team members sat quietly. Kim Minjun looked around the room and thought, even in this small room, the difference in rank is still big. This isn't the 80s. Suddenly, Lee Sung-ho called, "Dongjun." In the team, one person stood up to report. Private Lee Dongjun did. Sung-ho advised Dongjun, since he is a new soldier under him, please guide him carefully. Dongjun replied, "Yes, boss." Kim Minjun saw Dongjun coming and whispered, "This is my superior." Dongjun came in front of Minjun to say hello. "Hello, my name is Lee Dongjun." Lee Dongjun greeted with his hand and said, "Let's talk after eating. I just got special permission to go to PX. PX is like a canteen, a sales place in a military camp." Minjun heard that and wondered, "Why? But you can't just go to PX." Arriving in front of the cafeteria, Dongjun pointed and said, "Just choose what you want to eat." Minjun immediately replied, "Are you sure? I eat a lot." Dongjun immediately said to Minjun, "Of course, no need to worry, just choose and eat as you like." Minjun heard Dongjun say that and thought, he is so kind. After getting the items, I went to the counter to pay. The counterperson told me the price, 300,000 won. Dongjun was so stupid, holding the payment card, but his hand was shaking. His body was sweating. The counterperson saw that and asked, "Mister, do you have a cold? You're shivering so much." Coming to the sitting position, Dongjun told Minjun to eat naturally. Minjun asked while eating, "Aren't we normally allowed to come here? You just mentioned the special privilege before." Dongjun said, "Privates and below can only come here on weekends. Besides that, you need to be a private or above to use the gym and at least have to be a corporal to use the gym." Minjun was eating when he heard Dongjun say that and stopped thinking, "What, only corporals and above can use the computer room? Are you crazy?" Dongjun saw Minjun's reaction and said, "Well, you probably find it unreasonable, but it's not something a private like me can handle. You need to get used to it." Minjun quickly asked, "Is there no way to change it?" Dongjun replied, "He needs to be promoted to at least corporal. No, maybe he should be promoted to sergeant, although it won't be easy." Minjun thought, "As if I was sitting still, this is bad. Limiting the use of the computer room is too much for me to bear. There is no other way but to level up." Dongjun added, "Above all, it's not easy to become a sergeant in the Hunter Corps. I failed the promotion test many times, so I've been a private for 3 years now. How humiliating is that?" Minjun encouraged Dongjun, "It's okay. I think you can do it next time." Minjun thought, "I need to promote him soon so I can lift him up with him." Dongjun was encouraged by Minjun and scratched his head and said, "Thank you for encouraging me." Suddenly someone came and put his arm around Dongjun's neck and asked, "Who is this? Who is this? A new soldier and a private first class. Why did you buy such thin food?" Dongjun turned around and quickly greeted, "Sergeant Kim Gwangshik. Please eat with us." Gwangshik doesn't hesitate to agree. "I won't refuse the invitation." Gwangshik sat next to Dongjun to get food and drinks, eating and singing. Minjun saw Gwangshik like that and thought, as soon as he finished speaking, something was strange. Kim Gwangshik said while eating, "I won't say anything about you guys chatting here, but if you can't do anything at weapons training tomorrow, you two will die with me. I won't let it go for you. As a newbie, you already know how to aim and shoot." Dongjun sitting next to him quickly spoke for Minjun, "Yes, I just explained weapon training to him. After all, it's only a little different compared to other types. Kim Guangshik heard Dongjun say that and asked, "Is that so? I'm going to do that again." "You mean I only care when you do well, Private First Class Lee Dongjun?" Dongjun quickly apologized. "No, sorry sir." Guangshik mocked Dongjun and asked, "Why are you still a private when you're doing well? So are the candidates participating in the promotion exam stupid?" Minjun thought, "Why is this pig so annoying? I won't hold back anymore." Then Minjun put his right hand under the table to gather dark power. Minjun hit Guangshik's stomach and silently said, "Why don't you vomit everything you just swallowed?" Guangshik was happily saying Dongjun when suddenly a sharp pain came from his stomach. Guangshik immediately stood up. His face was sweating profusely. Dongjun saw that and asked, "Huh? What's wrong?" Minjun sitting opposite him smiled happily. Guangshik picked up the package of cakes and the can of water he had just drank and looked at the expiration date. His face calmed down and said, "Damn, that's strange." Minjun saw that and wondered, is he looking at the expiration date? After that, Guangshik said, "Well, it's nothing. You two should come back soon." After saying that, Guangshik left with a pale face. Dongjun saw Guangshik leaving and called out worriedly, "Sergeant Kim Guangshik." Minjun turned around to watch Guangshik leave and thought to himself, "I guess even if it's an E-level corrupt skill, sometimes it's still useful." Guangshik walked out holding his stomach. Both I trembled and thought, "Damn, what's wrong with my stomach? If it's not because of the food, then why?" After Kim Guangshik left, Minjun asked, "Private Lee Dongjun, what was that weapons training just now?" Dongjun asked again, Training." Dongjun explained, "You will have a KX-2 with ICM bullets before that, right? ICM bullets are improved bullets, specialized for use in Hunter Corps against terrible monsters." Dongjun continued to explain, "Then we use bullets with greater power than those. If the ICM bullet at the training center is a regular horse. Mine is now a wild horse. The recoil is completely different and the sound is like you're using an artillery gun. Because monsters appear far away from here, bullet damage is even more important. It's quite strange at first, so just prepare to be scolded and don't worry too much." After hearing this, Minjun immediately thought, a normal horse and a wild horse, that's a reasonable comparison. If you think about it, the ranged weapon I used in Isgard must be equivalent to an elephant. If it was just a wild horse, then I'd be glad. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Dongjun asked again, wondering what was wrong with Sergeant Kim Guangshik. He didn't look very good. The next morning, the whole team moved to the shooting training facility. At the shooting range, gunshots echoed around. Inside, Minjun was the first to shoot. After a while of shooting, Minjun's target had a big hole in his head and the bullet missed the top edge of the target. After shooting, Minjun said, "I missed one shot, too bad." The soldier standing near the target waved the flag and said with a surprised face, "Completed the target, hit 19, missed 1." Everyone was surprised after hearing this. When the people waiting for the shooting practice heard the results announced, they were talking, "Did you hear that? A private shot 10 times, he was a machine gun, wasn't that lucky? You could shoot that gun with a gun, lucky." There were 2 soldiers talking to each other. The red-haired one said, "My record is 14 shots, higher than the average of the whole team." But then, the other replied, "Right." On a hut, there were 2 people standing and observing the soldiers practicing. The 2 were the 2nd Battalion, 2nd Company, 2nd Platoon Leader, 2nd Lieutenant Kim Minchul, and the 2nd Battalion, 2nd Company, Management and Supply Officer, Lieutenant Pig Taeseok. Minchul said in surprise, "My God, 19 shots to the head." Taeseok replied, "I heard he was excellent. It seems the rumors are true." Minjun went out to rest. The red-haired soldier and the soldier who had just been talking approached and asked, "How did you do that?" Minjun replied, "I just followed instructions." The soldier accompanying the red-haired soldier said, "It sounded like us. I am not guided at all." Suddenly, Kim Minji standing behind the other 2 soldiers said, "You did well. You hit 19 bullets in the first round. Keep up the good work. I'm really looking forward to you at the special weapons training this afternoon." Minjun didn't know and asked himself, "Special weapons training?" The red-haired soldier pointed at Minjun and smiled happily, saying, "Oh, are the new soldiers about to try out special weapons training?" The person next to the red-haired soldier turned his head and asked, "Sergeant First Class Kim Minji, what do you think?" Minji frowned and shouted, "Put on your helmet, you lazy people." Minjun walked towards Dongjun and stood with everyone. Everyone saw Minjun and applauded. Dongjun complimented, "Wow, Minjun, you're really a good shot. You could be rewarded with a vacation if you hit both of them. That's 10 pills. What a pity." Minjun quickly interrupted, "Thank you everyone." After that, Minjun asked Dongjun, "But privately Dongjun, how is special weapons training different from this? I never heard about it." Dongjun shyly said, "Sorry, I don't think you're that good at shooting, because newbies are usually exempted from special weapons training because it takes them a long time to get used to our ICM bullets." I explained, "I like it briefly for you, even though you only heard the summary." Dongjun summarizes, "Special weapons training involves a two-person team entering the training facility and killing monsters on the way to the destination. Although they are not too dangerous, you will have to face moving targets. You must also be ready to block their attacks. Another thing is that you have to pay attention to the target signs of civilians that will appear suddenly. If you hit just one, you will miss regardless of how many monsters you kill. There's no need to be afraid when you face real monsters in real life. The management will control the situation, so no need to worry." Minjun felt happy when he heard that the monster was alive. He thought to himself, "The monster is alive, that sounds fun." Meal at noon. Sitting opposite Manold, young Lee Dongjun said before he could eat his rice, "I can't believe you can hit 19 shots. You must have been born to be a soldier." Manold also smiled and replied, "Soldier, especially Lee Dongjun. You hit 13 bullets, which is also a good result." Lee Dongjun was a bit shy about Meinl's compliment and said, "It's because I have previous experience, but technically I'm not very good." Or in other words, Sergeant Lee Sung-ho is the main damage dealer. He averages 17 hits. This makes him the best shooter in the team. Manold put a piece of peanut in his mouth and thought to himself, "Since the team's average is 10, then he's pretty good, so now I've taken over the top 1 spot." Lee Dongjun gave a thumbs up and said, "Anyway Minjun, I will definitely do well in the special weapons training session." Manold heard that and laughed ha ha ha. He said, "Private Lee Dongjun, you said there would be a two-person team there, right? Why don't you join me?" Lee Dongjun raised his hand to express his unanswered opinion. "No, the CEO will decide that, so I can't be sure of anything." Manold asked, "So what are the standards for registering team members? What is that?" According to the news, it is done through a ladder lottery. A ladder lottery designed to make random pairs, or called ghost legs. At a special training shooting range. A loud commanding voice rang out, "We will begin training in 5 minutes, all troops, put on your bulletproof vests and wait for orders." All the new recruits had finished preparing. Meinl's expression seemed a bit off. While I was thinking, another rookie suddenly said, "Oh, I'm on the same team as a newbie. I guess it won't be a good match." After all, a sergeant and a private are two different worlds. His satisfied expression made Meinl's eyes look in a different light. He thought, "Sergeant Kim Gwangshik, is this bastard my teammate? Judging by his expression, he definitely hasn't learned yet any lesson and still be arrogant." The name Kim Gwangshik was overwhelmed. He approached Manold and sarcastically said, "Let's see, since our team's average completion speed is 3 minutes, shouldn't we rookies be like that too? Be sure to complete it in 3 minutes, otherwise you will regret it." Manold just watched him and kept quiet. Lee Gwangshik looked at Meinl's face and asked, "Why don't you answer? Or have you lost your confidence? Was 19 shots first lucky?" Manold didn't respond because he knew this guy was a loser. Then a smile appeared on the corner of Meinl's mouth. He said, "No problem, I'll try my best." Lee Gwangshik pointed his finger at himself and said, No, I don't care how hard I try. Just the result. If you finish later than me, you're done. See what that team over there can do." The commander said, "The soldiers are ready. Report. First direction fire ready by Sergeant Kim Moongai. Second direction fire ready by Sergeant Jeng Han-young. Target landing. Special weapons training session begins after a team of 2 descends to a ground facility in 2 separate directions. Whoosh whoosh means training in monster suppression tactics while protecting civilian targets in a limited area. However, in reality, it has turned into a military competition. Now the goal is to complete the challenge as quickly and cleanly as possible. And hit the finish line at the finish line before your opponents. The training started a second ago. Manold looked at the board in front of him and thought, marking monsters that seemed to vary in size. The guy Lee Gwangshik next to him said, "The battle size will change based on the monster. The bigger the mark, the more dangerous the monster. You should know these things before starting right. There are 2 monsters placed on each lane, and which type you will face is completely random. So you won't know anything until you enter. A toad. But this toad is completely different from normal. Before the rookie could attack, the toad had the upper hand. Its long tongue immediately hit the rookie, but fortunately the rookie dodged to the right. The green dot is in the direction of the more dangerous monster. Manold thought again. The guy in lane 1 moved faster, but he was unlucky with that one monster. His opponent would catch up. Contrary to the toad, the opponent's monster was a mouse with blue fur and was also unusually large. The second gunnery sergeant, Zheng Hanyang, had finished dealing with the rat. He removed the magazine and smiled. This should be an easy victory. Let's move on to the next one in a flash. And Sergeant Zheng Hanyang's monster is a horror larva, which also makes him feel annoying. On the side of the No. 1 sergeant, a series of bullets were being fired at the toad. Kill that toad, Sergeant Kim Moongai hurriedly ran and said. 2 scabby toads in a row, really, I'm sure he finished it. Sergeant Kim Moongai was surprised because the button hadn't been activated yet. And of course he didn't hesitate to come up and press the button, smiling. At 2 minutes and 24 seconds, the final sound rang out. Looking from the board, you could see that Sergeant No. 2 had just finished taking care of that lava. The sound of people talking outside, 2 minutes and 25 seconds is not bad. The second line has encountered desert worms. Are those worms all defense? Seeing Sergeant Zheng Hanyang just went out in a tired state, Kim Moongai asked why he was so late. How was he going to protect the country? Zheng Hanyang tried his best to answer even if he was tired. What a lucky bastard. Kim Moongai didn't respond in anger. Just console yourself. I'm still the better person. Because I won, you'll treat me at PX. In addition to finishing the job, you want to shoot at people, but anyway, that's not enough. Hearing that the 2 of them had just finished competing, the winner was proud and the loser was angry and dissatisfied. Li Guangxik said, I guess you 2 made a bet. Bet? An idea appeared in Meinl's mind. He immediately suggested to Li Guangxik, why don't we bet? Arrogant Li Guangxik, he snorted and said, did I hear you right? Manold pointed his finger at him and said, no boss, if he loses, he will do what the winner asks like a man. Just after listening, Li Guangxik laughed like crazy and said, hey, do you think you can do something because the spirits love you? Okay, let's bet. If my subordinates want it, I won't refuse, right? But that's too bad. I don't have any wishes that a private can fulfill, so you will have to give me 3 months' salary if I lose, okay? Manold thought, he just needs money, then this is his kind of person. Okay. If I lose 3 months my salary will go to the boss, Li Guangxik replied, baring his teeth. Look, this guy is quite good. Li Dongjun watched from afar. He just called Meinl's name and then said nothing more. The next team prepares, the command needle sounds. Is there anything to report before the training begins? Both Manold and Li Guangxik replied, no sir. Then lower it. The stairs take 2 people down to the training site. Slowly moving down to the training area, thinking as I'm Manold, I can feel that kind of cheap provocation. I know it's not good to stand out too much, I know, but I'm not mature enough to sit still when someone provokes me. Time has been moving for 1 second. Have you heard? A sergeant and a private made a bet. How will the private beat the sergeant? Forget about winning. Will he be able to kill the monster? I wonder if Sergeant First Class Kim Minji will end up rescuing him. The laughter of these observers had just disappeared, and in their eyes was an expression of disbelief. A concussion. What is that? Earthquake? Li Dongjun said, no. What the heck? The second door monster is moving towards the first door, which means 2 monsters appear at the same time. Manold took the gun and entered the first door. He also felt the vibration in space. Manold thought, what is this vibration? I think it is near me. An incredulous look appeared on his face. The second monster is eating the first monster. Minjun asked in surprise, what is that? What is it eating? A monster. The Cyclops monster chewed on the monster while glaring at Minjun. Minjun stood looking at the monster. The angry Cyclops monster held the lower half of the monster's body in his mouth and screamed. Cyclops threw the lower half of his body to the ground. Minjun saw that and jumped back. Minjun looked at Cyclops and thought to himself, tonight's menu is fried chicken, right? I want to finish making it as soon as possible so I can go home to eat. Minjun saw a target in the distance and immediately thought, that must be the target I have to miss to be eliminated. If I shoot carelessly and hit it, I'd be very unlucky. The Cyclops monster stepped out of the smoke and raised its hand to attack Minjun. Minjun thought, but why is that bastard so annoying? Minjun reached back and gathered force into his fist. Minjun and the Cyclops monster exchanged 2 punches. Dark power filled the room. The Cyclops monster's arm was broken. Cyclops's arm that had just punched Minjun was broken, causing the Cyclops monster to scream in pain. The Cyclops monster stepped back. Minjun smiled and said, "Finally calm down a bit, now I have to shoot you down." Minjun suddenly noticed something happened. From the severed arm of the transforming Cyclops monster, Cyclops's severed arm has turned into a large sword. Outside, on the bulletin board, the demon face symbolizing the monster in Minjun's street suddenly lit up. The soldiers were yelling in panic and asked, "What's going on? Are the new soldiers in combat mode? Is there an accident or something?" The soldiers waiting for training immediately stirred, and Kim Min-ji, the manager, was also surprised and frightened. Min-ji thought, the second monster on line 2, that's a Cyclops. Also known as the voracious demon. Once it uses energy, its regeneration and attack abilities increase sharply until digestion is complete. But there's something strange, it won't attack unless its life is in danger, and besides, it escaped confinement and went on a rampage after eating another monster. What provoked it? In the training room, the Cyclops monster continuously attacked Minjun, but Minjun easily dodged. Minjun jumped in front of Cyclops. Cyclops immediately attacked Minjun. Minjun held the gun in his hand and said, oh my, what an active son of a bitch. Minjun reloads the KX-2 and says it will be easier to defeat you. But this is supposed to be weapons training, Minjun said as he shot the Cyclops monster in the eye. Cyclops shot through the eye but still lived. The monster screamed in pain. While Cyclops was screaming to regenerate his eyes, Minjun quickly landed and ran to approach the monster. While running, Minjun reloaded his gun and thought, it seems like its eyes regenerate more slowly, I should end it now. The Cyclops monster realized something and turned sharply towards Minjun. Minjun was rushing towards him. The Cyclops monster slashed in Minjun's direction. The Cyclops monster slashed Minjun's head as he ran over. Time seemed to stop for Minjun. Minjun looked at the sword next to his neck and thought, look at that bastard. He aimed exactly where I was standing. Could he see, or could he sense it by sound, or something else? The Cyclops monster's slash went all the way. Minjun was able to lean back to avoid the attack. The Cyclops monster didn't stop, using his other hand to hit where Minjun was standing. Cyclops suddenly stopped. Under Cyclops's hand, Minjun's hand blocked Cyclops' attack. Minjun said, that's strange. There's no way they would use a violent monster like this for training. I covered its eyes, but somehow it discovered my location twice in a row. At this moment, Minjun's body radiated dark power. Minjun's whole body was surrounded by dark power. Even killing intent appeared. Minjun said, are you reacting to my dark energy? The door to the training room suddenly opened. Minji came in fully armed. Minji thought to herself, this is a disaster. Why did this happen to a new soldier? While running towards Minjun's room, Minji thought, it's all my fault. A Cyclops that can use energy is not something a private can defeat with just a gun. Kim Minjun, don't die, just try harder. In the other room, Guangxik was running quickly towards the exit. Guangxik looked at his watch and thought, okay, I'll time it for about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. That private kid won't be able to stop my speed. He failed as I expected. What should I do with that bastard's salary? It's okay to use it on vacation. As soon as Guangxik ran to the exit, Minjun was already standing in front of the button. Minjun was looking at the button when Guangxik suddenly shouted loudly and asked, why are you still here? Minjun heard the noise and looked over. Minjun smiled complacently and pressed the button to open the exit door. Guangxik saw this and shouted loudly, sweating. Kim Minji ran to Minjun's training room and was surprised. Minji looked at the Cyclops monster's body and asked, how can you defeat it like this later? After going out, everyone outside immediately cheered. The soldiers gathered at the exit clapped and cheered. No one completed the first special weapons training course within 2 minutes. the new soldiers are monsters. That private defeated a Cyclops himself. I swear I thought there would be an accident. Dongjun quickly ran to ask Minjun, Minjun, are you okay? Do you hurt anywhere? Minjun replied, privately Dongjun, I'm fine, no pain at all. Everyone gathered around Minjun. Dongjun asked, so relieved, how did you defeat it? Minjun smiled and replied, I defeated it the way you taught me. Dongjun asked again, like I taught you. Guangxik lost to the newbie then left angrily. A soldier stood up and asked, isn't this team betting? Anyway, the rookie won, right? Guangxik angrily walked over and hit the soldier on the back of the neck who had just stood up to ask. Guangxik said, do you want to die or something? It's not fair, so let's cancel the bet. Everyone present shouted loudly asking, cancel the bet. Guangxik pointed at Minjun and said, there's no way I can finish faster than the newbie. The special weapons training is designed to defeat 2 monsters before reaching the destination. I've already defeated 2, that's the rule, but what about new recruits? What about new glasses? He only faced 1. See, it's not fair. If I also met 1, it would have been completed faster. Li Dongjun, why didn't you say anything? Is it fair? Dongjun was scared, just Guangxik immediately pressured Dongjun, say something quickly, or he will die. Minjun stood behind Dongjun silently but secretly thought, he is the worst person. Although this is quite surprising, I don't feel good about defeating monsters with my fists, so I plan to forget about the bet. And now this is how he acts. Why is he making trouble with Private Li Dongjun instead of me? At this moment, Guangxik grabbed Dongjun's collar and said, answer me, Li Dongjun. Dongjun is scared but trying to say, Corporal Guangxik, please let me go. Everyone surrounded the 3 people laughing. Suddenly a voice interrupted and said, Guangxik, aren't you embarrassed? New recruits take higher risks. Guangxik couldn't understand that sentence and immediately turned around and shouted angrily, ha, what a bastard. That soldier said, normally Cyclops are very gentle. But once they react, the danger increases significantly. I thought no one knew. I have to face much greater difficulties than you. When everyone saw that soldier's face, they were surprised. Everyone called out, Sergeant Lee Sungho. When Guangxik saw that it was Sungho, he calmed down and smiled and said, ha ha, well. Guangxik smiled awkwardly and asked, are you trying to show your rank in front of your juniors? Sungho replied, he was the one who did it first. Guangxik was angry but still tried to laugh and said, oh my, okay, don't be so embarrassed in front of the kids, just kidding, don't be too tense. Sungho asked again, joking. Sungho walked over and nudged Guangxik on the shoulder and said, everything that's not what you think is a joke, you haven't changed, anyway. It's amazing that you have a higher rank, Corporal Guangxik, because the stubborn mules that were once your seniors surprisingly became docile in front of you. Minjun stood from afar and heard this, silently wondering, is that so? Guangxik blushed when Sungho said that and couldn't say anything. Sergeant Lee Sungho was carrying the equipment box and urged, what are you guys doing? Stop standing there looking, set up shields now. The other 2 soldiers turned around and said, Sergeant Lee Sungho, sir, the thing is, right now. Private Kim Minjun was, the image of Minjun enthusiastically destroying each enemy one by one caught everyone's eyes. Lee Sungho heard it and immediately said, what? Listen you bastards, a private is attracting their attention, but you're just standing there watching. Everyone else said in unison, excuse me. Kim Minjun used his bare hands to rip off the bat's wings. He sighed tiredly, thinking to himself, it took too much time because I had to tear them apart one by one. Was there nothing useful? From behind there was a loud scream, Kim Minjun, this bastard. He instinctively turned around. Lee Sungho angrily grabbed an electric baton and ran to scold him, lower your ego and step back. What do you think you're doing? You don't even have a bulletproof vest. Minjun didn't listen to his words and continued to develop his ability, thinking to himself, why the hell are you lowering your ego? They're all mine, don't even think about it. He glanced at Lee Sungho's hand and saw an electric baton. Kim Minjun became even more interested, smiling and thinking, ho ho, that looks interesting. Suddenly, an electric current ran through Lee Sungho's body. His face became unsightly and he cursed, damn, why is my stomach acting up right now? Kim Minjun walked closer and asked, Sergeant Lee Sungho, what's wrong, sir? Are you okay? Lee Sungho held his stomach with one hand, One leg bent down and struggled to answer. "I'm fine," Kim Minjun asked again. "Are you sure? So then let me borrow that for a bit." Lee Sung-ho firmly refused. "No. You need to step back." Kim Minjun picked up the electric baton and injected energy into it, causing it to emit electricity. He said, "Don't worry about me. I'll be back as soon as I deal with him," thinking, "Oh, this is great, a blister, swatting flies with electricity." Kim Minjun smiled with satisfaction. "Now, let's go." Minjun took steps and ran straight to the bats. If the electric grenade hits any bat, it will be destroyed immediately. Kim Minjun frantically ran from place to place, destroying each bat. Lee Sung-ho opened his eyes in surprise. This guy. Overwhelming the intermediate level, the image of Kim Minjun moving flexibly, killing bats one by one caught Lee Sung-ho's eyes. A soldier carrying a roll of rope raised his head, eyes wide, and spoke loudly. "Ah, that bat, a bat preparing to spit out a fireball." The fire had reached the bat's mouth and was about to fly straight to the oil tanks. Lee Sung-ho quickly ordered, "Shoot. I will take all responsibility, so just shoot." The two soldiers obeyed. "Yes, boss." A soldier raised his gun, preparing to shoot at the bat. Suddenly he opened his eyes bewildered. "Hey, intermediate level, haven't you heard? If you play with fire," Kim Minjun jumps up behind and says the bat is about to shoot a fireball. "You'll get burned. You hit that bat hard." It was frightened by the light of the electric current, so the fireball also disappeared. Minjun on top handled the bat with electricity. Everyone below looked up and wondered, how the hell did he get up there? Who knows, more importantly, how high did he jump? Cable is plugged into a device. The defense shield for the oil reserve has been completely established. The defense shield has been activated. Make sure to check the cables carefully. What about the bats? How long will it take to collect all the bat corpses? Everyone is very busy. Lee Sung-ho heard the call. He turned around. Lee Sung-ho put his hand on his forehead. "Hello?" The officer walked over and said, "Yeah, good job. But where did they come from? We never detected them on the radar." The officer waved his hand. "Ha, the smell of grilled bats is really bad. Who grilled them? How many of them are there in total?" Lee Sung-ho replied loudly, "A total of 30, sir." Then he thought to himself, "I was wondering where the commander was." The officer in charge of the mission was Captain Song Junshik. Lee Sung-ho reported, "The battalion commander just left." Song Junshik replied, "Okay, even if he's not good at fighting, it's not okay for an awakened operator to be absent from the situation urgent and only appears when everything is resolved." Lee Sung-ho thought to himself, he probably only saw the monsters from the radar, from the control center. Song Junshik spoke, "Anyway, Sung-ho, you are the one in charge of removing the flood, right? I will definitely tell the battalion commander." Lee Sung-ho spoke up, "Not me." Song Junshik was quite surprised and asked, "What, then who did it? Is there someone else in the battalion who has the same skill with batons as you?" Lee Sung-ho reported seriously, "Not everyone was killed by electric batons, but all 30 bats were defeated by one person. Please be sure to report this." Song Junshik couldn't believe his ears. He questioned, "What, are you on my lap now? Are you saying these torn bats were also killed by the same person?" All the operators were thinking, if not you, then someone. Another step forward. "Hello? I came to return you this electric baton, sir." Heard a sound coming from behind. Song Junshik glanced back. Kim Minjun held the broken baton that was leaking electricity and asked, "Is this thing very expensive?" When Kim Gwangshik heard Sergeant Lee Sung-ho say that, he blushed and gritted his teeth until his face was deformed. He was humiliated. Lee Sung-ho calmly turned around and asked, "Ha, what do you want?" Kim Gwangshik forced a smile, awkwardly waved his hand and replied, "Ha ha, no, of course not." Then Lee Sung-ho immediately spoke up, "Yes, Kim Gwangshik." He shouldn't say anything more. He could only grit his teeth and bow his head to listen to Lee Sung-ho answer as he walked, much to everyone's surprise. Now the sky has turned to the orange color of sunset. The sound of gossip is heard. "So you say, Sergeant Lee Sung-ho was promoted 2 ranks. Yes, this is a special case, because he got the highest rank in the advanced exam. However, even though he was able to get a 2-level increase, the special status no longer has the energy." Lee Dongjun held the broom while explaining, "They got rid of it because there was a sergeant who was promoted but then caused an incident in the dungeon, and Sergeant Lee Sung-ho was one of the last cases." Kim Minjun wondered, So there is no way to get special treatment anymore? Lee Dongjun answered him. There are exceptions, like if you can rescue civilians in an emergency. Lee Dongjun touched his chin and continued. Or if he achieved excellent results in monster hunting. But all of those cases were quite subjective. It was best for him to think that such a rule did not exist. No other hunter has ever been specially promoted. I understand. Kim Minjun said he understood on the surface, but in his heart he was thinking, subjectively, then the commander has the final say. Even if I don't get promoted, I don't want danger to fall on the civilians, but it seems peaceful here. Even though they said monsters appear every day since the North Korean team was wiped out, he thought, imagining monsters chasing civilians. Lee Dongjun smiled and said to him, because you are doing very well now, I'm sure you will be promoted soon. Minjun said with a dumbfounded face, the experience of being a private for 2 days is more than enough. I got promoted right away. Seeing you look dumbfounded, Lee Dongjun asked. Did you hear that? Kim Minjun screamed inside. Oh God! I wish a portal would appear right now. The siren sounded. Lee Dongjun turned his head in shock. Kim Minjun looked blank and still didn't understand what was going on. Sounds from loudspeakers rang out. Orders were broadcast from the control center. Emergency alarm! Emergency alarm! A significant number of intermediate bats appeared in the oil reserve. All hunters were instructed to quickly gather at the oil reserve and set up defensive shields immediately. Lee Dongjun said, here it is again. It's an emergency alarm. Minjun, let's go. Kim Minjun's face was as happy as finding gold, silently wondering, really? Intermediate bat, a monster about the size of a child, living in caves. Each individual is not much of a threat, but they are exceptionally agile. Furthermore, they can spit fireballs from their mouths. So their appearance in the oil reserve is an emergency where the entire military run could be blown away. 2 soldiers standing outside the gate of the oil reserve looked in horror at the bats flying above. A young man spoke up, how many bats are there? The remaining young man picked up his gun, pointed it at the bats and said excitedly, how dare they appear here? The young man next to him quickly stopped him. Are you crazy? You can't open fire near the oil reserve. What if they attack us here? The young man who was pointing the gun lowered his gun and turned to ask the other person, so you mean I can only stand and watch them like that? The other person explained, they haven't approached the oil depot yet. Just keep observing the situation. Well, since I've already reported it, I'm sure someone will be sent to set up a defense shield. The man who pointed the gun asked, what if the monsters burned down the oil depot before the defense shields were placed? The other man said, just barely able to speak, if that happened. The two of them imagined that scene together. Boom! A loud explosion rang out. Just thinking about it made him scared, the person pointing the gun said. They both broke their heads in confusion. The other asked, what should we do? The other replied, I don't know. Why did those bastards come to this place? Suddenly someone walked up and spoke. I will attract their attention. The 2 soldiers heard the voice and instinctively turned to look. Kim Minjun walked up with enthusiasm. Both of them said loudly in surprise, huh, aren't you the rookie of the Second Army? Seeing Kim Minjun with his hands in his pockets, calmly walking closer to the bats, the other 2 stopped him. Hey, what the hell are you planning to do? You don't even have any equipment with you. Come back immediately. Hearing the other 2 stop, Minjun just thought to himself, equipment, who has the free time? When the distinguished guests who helped me get promoted were waiting for me, the sky was filled with a flock of bats, flying around as if the whole sky was theirs. Along with the title, the private who single-handedly prevented an emergency that could blow up the entire military camp, I will also absorb all the experience points. This may not be right. Kim Minjun he just opened his arms and prepared to deploy his abilities. The veins in his hand began to pop out, along with red flames surrounding their hands. He remembered the Cyclops he had just met the day before. He defeated it alone without difficulty. The bats seemed to know that he was planning to fight with them, so they also started screaming as a challenge. The flock of bats flying around made Minjun excitedly think, standing as expected, these bastards are reacting to my dark energy. Kim Minjun smiled triumphantly, then you are all mine. A group of soldiers are moving equipment to the oil reserve. Hurry up, don't damage the equipment. While moving, the leading soldier suddenly stopped so the 2 collided with each other. The soldiers following behind asked confusedly, huh? Why did you stop? The leading soldier said in shock, over there. The person behind him asked, hey, what's going on? Then he was shocked and opened his mouth, huh? The next day, Kim Minjun, tell the truth, a voice came out. Do you want to re-enlist? That person, Minjun coldly replied, no. So do you have regression? That person heard the answer, so he continued asking, no, he still coldly replied. If that's not the case, then don't do anything thoughtless like yesterday. The person who asked was Sergeant Lee Sung-ho. He sat up straight and said to Minjun with a straight face, this time it was just your luck. But since you're a hunter, you don't know what will happen next time, Sung-ho said in a low voice. Minjun silently looked at the sergeant. In his mind he thought, it's not lucky, but I have to stand still. You also know, the Hunter Corps is a special organization. Its scale is different from other corps. Even though that corps is division level, it only has 4 companies, Sung-ho explained to Minjun. Even the corps, the attached squadron, also had a much smaller number of soldiers than regular army companies. Because not all awakened people can join the army. But why are you suddenly talking about this? Minjun sat up straight and looked at the sergeant, thinking to himself. How can you imagine that? The sergeant said, looking at Minjun. Minjun was confused by the sergeant's statement. Because in the Hunter Corps, from private to division commander, Sergeant Sung-ho clenched his fists until his veins appeared and said with a serious face, all of them were awakened people. Of course not all are combat members, the sergeant further explained. Especially among the officers, the majority are administrative staff, monster researchers, tactics and weapons researchers. I remember the soldier I met before. Minjun let out a loud sound. But all of them are awakened people, and hunter soldiers are not promoted by their time in the army, but by their strength and achievements, the sergeant said as he stood up, looked down at Minjun and said. Since early morning the company commander called me to come. So I was expecting that something good would happen, but, looking up at the sergeant, Minjun thought to himself, what is this about? Training time, that's a good thing to say. I was called to the company commander's room early in the morning, so I was looking forward to it, right? The sergeant glanced at me and raised his mouth. I'm looking forward to you, Kim Minjun, the sergeant said. Minjun was surprised by Sung-ho's words. Today, the sergeant said. A black car is driving fast on the road. The car is shiny and brand new. The front of the car has a red plate, 2 yellow stars. The hunter has hunted the most monsters in the division's history, 1 out of 4, the sergeant said in a serious voice. In the car, the majestic man sat in the back seat. The soldier in the front also sat upright and seriously drove. The car braked. The wheels frictioned with the road surface, causing smoke and dust to fly. The car door opened and a strong foot stepped down. Came to visit our company, Sergeant Lee Sung-ho said. The bearded man with an air of authority looked at the sergeant and the others standing still to greet him. The person who shouted the order was Company Ha, Company Commander Lee Jumbyom. The people standing seriously in line from right to left are Company 2 Operations Officers, Captain Song Jun-sik, Company 2 Platoon Leader, Captain Seo Jumeon, Company 2, Lieutenant 2nd Squad, 2nd Lieutenant, Kim Chaelman, 2nd Company, 2nd Platoon, 2nd Squad Leader, Sergeant Lee Sung-ho. The commander shook hands and said in a serious tone, Sergeant, Lee Sung-ho. I heard you handled the scene very calmly yesterday. You worked hard, the commander said. Thank you, Commander, Sung-ho replied solemnly. It's been a long time since I last saw everyone, the commander said to Sung-ho. People around thought worriedly, their eyes looked like murder. I wonder what the Hunter Corps standard for achieving 2 stars is. Minjun stood looking at the scene before his eyes and thought to himself. You are Kim Minjun? The commander shook hands and asked Minjun. Private, Kim Minjun is me, he replied loudly and seriously. Oh, I used a lot of force when shaking my hand, Minjun thought, glancing down. That's right, everyone just relax, as the commander said. He patted Minjun's shoulder a few times and said with a cheerful smile, while Minjun was startled by the commander's pat on the shoulder. Have you grasped the location where the gate appeared? The commander asked. Yes, have determined the location on a hill in the northeast 1.2 kilometers from the barracks, currently controlling the surrounding area and investigating the ranks of the communists, 2nd Team Captain Lee Jumbyom replied. If verified, immediately report to the division commander's office. Upon hearing the report, the commander immediately responded. What is the problem with the radar? The commander looked at Captain Song Jun-sik and asked. The alarm did not sound until the middle back entered the corps. Determined that the problem was not in the equipment, checking the problem, commander said, if it's not due to equipment, then the problem is in numbers. We will report to the military region and install more radars." Obeying the order, Captain Seo Jungyeon replied loudly. Minjun looked at the scene before him and chuckled, thinking, "Everyone is scared, so cool." Kim Minjun, yesterday you did something brave. Your initial reaction was quick. But you also had to think about yourself. You had to bring equipment with you. The commander looked at Minjun and said with a smile. Private Kim Minjun, it's my fault. On the surface, he answered seriously. On the inside he thought, if this keeps up, the army will disappear. Sorry. Are you kidding? As he said, the commander walked over. Dealing with 30 people alone, the commander happily smiled and asked, Yes? Minjun seriously replied to the commander, If you don't react quickly, watch out, the soldiers will explode. Very good. The commander praised Minjun. Hearing the commander praise Minjun, the others were surprised and sweaty when they heard it. The division commander will give you a gift, the commander said. Having said that, he reached out and tore off the badge on Minjun's shirt. Immediately after, he put up another badge. Congratulations on your promotion. Originally you had to pass several tests. Soldiers with overwhelming results will be rewarded. The commander happily said to Minjun. Private Kim Minjun thanked you. Minjun loudly stood still, which says, Company commander, this guy will have 3 days and 2 nights off. The commander turned to look at Lee Jungbyom giving orders. Obeyed, he replied. Minjun suddenly thought to himself, he didn't expect to be promoted. But also rest. Minjun thought with pleasure, military life is getting more and more interesting. Feet are walking. Minjun is following Lieutenant Kim Chaelman. Very good, kid. You just came in and haven't said a few words yet you've already achieved results. Thanks to that I was praised. The second lieutenant turned his head to look at Minjun and said with a smile. Thank you. Minjun replied smiling. I just joined the army and can go home. What are you going to do when you go out? The lieutenant happily asked Minjun curiously. Minjun said with a happy face, I. On the city sidewalk, Minjun was walking. Look at the PC store in front of you. Minjun smiled happily and said, Of course it's an internet shop. Anyway, back home in the control area, Minjun smiled happily and thought, all the prints were cut off. Until I get called, I have to spend these 3 days and 2 nights really hard, he thought as he excitedly walked into the center. Boss, are you here? One person said before Minjun entered. Are you going there again? A person who was drinking looked at the guy who called and said, Boss, don't mention it again. Damn soldiers. He was dissatisfied and said to the fat man, I didn't go into that cave, just planning to pick some mushrooms around. They stopped me. I gave the money to the mountain owner and it was accepted. The thin man sat down and said, the fat man offered him a drink, but he refused because he was driving. The fat man had just finished drinking a glass of wine, said, Changsun went there before it was banned. I heard there was toxic gas in the mountain. Changsun's mind has since become unconscious. If you go there, you will encounter problems, he continued. Just wear a gas mask, the skinny guy said angrily. Where is that? A voice rang out. Both men turned around in surprise to see that it was Minjun. The two glanced at each other without saying anything. At a place 200 meters away from Hwacheon, the car was moving. Can I find it from here? A voice rang out. Oh yes, thank you too for bringing me here, another voice replied. Thank you for driving me. Minjun smiled and said to the fat man, even if we went any further, the army would block the way, we couldn't go. He asked a little curiously, but you went up the mountain to solve that problem, really? Yes, by tomorrow we can go up the mountain, Minjun replied. Both of them looked at the badge on Minjun's shirt. Anyway, be careful. If anyone asks, don't say we'll take you there. Then he drove away. Minjun looked after and replied, yes, don't worry. The mountain continuously emitted a dark aura. I left the internet shop to come here. Looking at that air, Minjun smiled and thought, this familiar smell, it sure is it. The flow of air is constantly emitted. Minjun smiled and said in his heart, magic. There are 2 guards guarding here. Minjun looked up from the tree and thought, the mountain gate was carefully fenced while the dungeon was loosely fenced. If that's the case, Minjun's hand is naturally filled with darkness, he thought, as a private, it's not good to stand out too much. The airflow slowly flew out. The dark aura surrounded the 2 soldiers. Why suddenly my stomach hurts? One spoke up, my stomach hurts too, the other continued. You too? The soldier asked, looking at his teammates. Ha ha, I'll hold off for a bit. Sorry, but it probably won't work, the other soldier replied. Hey, no one is coming here anyway, let's go deal with it quickly, it should take about 5 minutes. Then the soldier ran away, obeying the order. The other soldier also agreed and ran in another direction. There are no guards in front of the cave gate. Minjun quickly jumped in. He happily smiled. His hand placed on the ground, he thought suspiciously, why is there no trace of a monster, but the magic power is dense. Minjun smiled and thought, anyway. His hand cast magic, then he brought it forward to cast the spell. The system continuously reports increased magic points. Magic power continued to increase. Minjun looked at the system that was constantly increasing and said, it's increased. The system reported that because he had absorbed enough magic power, Minjun had the power of the Rot skill and the Night Walker skill was unleashed. Minjun smiled happily. After absorbing magic power, notification boxes continuously appear around it. The magic energy absorption meets certain standards, the power of the Rot skill. Absorbing a certain amount of magic power, the Night Walker skill is released. Seeing that, Minjun smiled with satisfaction. Minjun absorbed the magic power and thought, he was lucky. Then the bulletin board showed another message, Kim Minjun, founder of the Lumi Nuna Church, is my favorite character, strength is 60, agility is 60, stamina is 60. Only the number of magic power reaches 15, the skills possessed are Rot and Night Walker. Minjun saw the bulletin board continuing to absorb magic power and thought, I can't believe there is a skill to use magic power for free. Minjun thought of a new ability, summoning animals in the form of a Night Walker shadow. This guy has the special trait of hiding under the shadow and assassinating the target. Is a welcome name. Quite useful since he was in Isgard. To maintain the summoning, you must feed it an equivalent amount of magic power at each certain cycle, but after thinking about it, Minjun summoned and appeared, thinking to himself, he is a guy worth the price. Suddenly an arm appeared. Boom! A shadow monster appeared. The monster was so small that it flew in front of Minjun, but he didn't know what to say. Minjun pursed his lips and wondered, what is this? Is it also a punishment due to space transformation, or is it because the magic index is too low? Then he looked out the door and saw the light shining in, thinking, anyway, this is too much. Where is this skinny guy who looks like he's about to melt even if a ray of sunlight shines on him right now? Oh. Suddenly Minjun discovered something and said, wait. Small in stature, is he a summoned beast that can hide under the shadow? Minjun analyzed, and the shadow opened his arms and said, I'm hungry. Return to the military area. Going into the room, Kim Minjun said, reporting that Private First Class Kim Minjun had returned from vacation. Everyone in the room also came out to greet him. Everyone greeted him in front of him. Who is this? I'm not a hunter. Is it the earliest to end your life as a private? I heard that the division commander at various levels gave you a leave of absence, and the division commander also directly gave you your military rank. Minjun said, yes, that's right. Suddenly, Minjun realized something. Then turned around while everyone was still talking. That's really good, I realized it right away, you lie. Kim Minjun then took out a paper bag. Minjun took it out and gave it to Dongjun and said, I bought a bottle of lotion. You should use it. Dongjun was surprised by the gift and said, oh, me? Did you buy all of these too? Dongjun took out the gift, looked at it and happily said, thank you. I will use it well. Suddenly Kim Guangshik came into the room and said, did you come back from overseas deployment? What a touching comradeship. While talking, he suddenly asked seriously, did you buy what I asked for, Maxim? Minjun said honestly, yes, here it is. Then handed out a few packages that made him blush. Dongjun turned around and asked, if I get promoted to the rank of senior soldier at this rate, I would have to treat him well. Minjun replied, of course. Captain Kim and Captain Joe passed by and saw him saying, ah yes, this youngest brother. Just now I passed by the administrative board and saw the list of candidates taking the promotion exam. With your name on it too? Captain Kim asked, what, didn't that mean registration was finished before the youngest came back? No, after all, people who have only joined for less than a year cannot register themselves. Captain Joe also wondered, is the division commander registering for you? Even so, the timing doesn't match. Everyone in the room heard that and started talking. Is the youngest taking the promotion exam? Is it possible? I'm a private now, and I'm no longer the youngest. While we were talking, Minjun said, actually, He was the battalion commander of the training station. Gave me a proposal, recalling the time I met the battalion commander and discussed it with him in the room. Then the battalion commander shouted angrily. Minjun told everyone everything. Everyone gathered to listen in the room. But before he could react to what Minjun said, they all froze. Captain Joe sweat dropped and asked, "How is it possible that you came here to take the promotion exam a year early? This is really a crazy guy." Captain Kim rubbed his chin and analyzed. "At that time you were already a private first class. So this time it's the senior soldier promotion exam." Everyone still gathered around him and talked. If he passed all that, then he was truly a crazy person, while Guangshik sat behind him and stirred the package Minjun brought home. Captain Kim happily cheered Minjun on. In short, those who take the promotion exam on Saturday will receive training before the promotion exam, and also main weapon training tomorrow, so please do your best. And Captain Joe goodbye too. Hey everyone, let's escape." The two of them walked out the door still talking. Captain Kim, "Are you not taking the promotion exam?" Captain Joe, "Are you going to pay a stake?" Minjun sat listening and wondered, is the main weapon training different from the rifle? The next day, at the military zone, the lieutenant is talking about the exam regulations and methods. "Please pay attention. I will briefly explain the promotion exam tomorrow." The whole room, from privates to privates and above, are all listening to the lieutenant's words. Those who have experience, even if the content is already known, should not do their own work so that first-time test takers can focus. After the reminder, the lieutenant said the regulations. First, the Hunter promotion test is divided into two main types. The Hunter promotion test is conducted in the order of essay exam and practical exam. The essay exam can be passed easily with basic knowledge. Level is easier than the driver's license essay test, but after listening, Kim Minjun went back to his room. While walking and thinking, as expected, the important thing is still the practice test, right? In the practice test, the mastery of the main weapon will be tested and the status and ability to deal with monsters will be tested. Although passing the exam is definitely within reach, I don't know what kind of rewards will there be if I get the maximum score. Maybe I should try taking the exam a little more seriously. The next day, it was cool outside and all kinds of weapons were displayed in front of them. The lieutenant stood in front of all the soldiers and said loudly, "From now on, the practical exam will begin with main weapons training. Private and first-class soldiers should not choose another weapon but should pick up a sword." Everyone responded, clearly. Then everyone went to get their weapons as instructed. The lieutenant continued to speak. The senior soldiers took their weapons and walked over there to practice individually. "If you catch someone lazy smoking, you're dead to me." After getting their weapons, everyone gathered in formation. The lieutenant said, "From now on, what the training officer teaches is the basic swordsmanship in the teachings of the Hunter Corps. To put it clearly, obviously, it's not just about mechanically following the Dharma. The basic gist of the Hunter Corps swordsmanship is to adapt it to suit yourself." After instructing him, he shouted loudly and asked, "Is it clear?" Everyone responded loudly, "Yes, clearly." Then, the lieutenant continued to speak loudly. "First of all, the basics are important, so look at me and follow. Don't roll your eyes around but focus on." After speaking, he performed sword movements in one go. The movement was so precise and laborious that when it stopped, the dust around the sword emitted a cloud of smoke. Minjun looked at the sword movements and realized something. He knew why he trained with the main weapon. Remember when you used magic to kill monsters? Capturing monsters with just a rifle was a foolish move, he thought. Everyone started practicing and asked each other, "Is this what it is?" Minjun also practiced the movements again. Minjun thinks back, swordsmanship is better in Isgard. Then while thinking and practicing the movements, it was time to jump up high, surprising everyone. Minjun finished the sentence, "But it's up to each person what to use." That's when Minjun performed the move and lowered himself to the ground. While practicing, the lieutenant suddenly shouted, "Everyone stop moving." Kim Minjun stepped forward. It's nothing for him to answer. Private First Class Kim Minjun knows. Then I went up, but I still wondered, what's wrong? Then walked all the way up to the lieutenant's direction. The lieutenant commented loudly, "According to the observation results of the training officer, there are many broken and clumsy parts of everyone's movements. Let's observe for once how Private Kim Minjun does it." After hearing this, Minjun was surprised and a little panicked, then started practicing according to the lieutenant's instructions. Minjun started doing the movements again. For every implementer, there is a guide. Smooth guiding movements. Everyone below gulped nervously. After practice, he found a cool place to sit down and said, "Phew, that's natural. I'm not a training assistant. Sigh, it's so hot, there's no snow today." Suddenly the lieutenant appeared calling, "Kim Minjun." Kim Minjun turned around to look at the lieutenant, who was searching for something in his pocket, and said, "You've worked hard. The training officer is very pleased with you." Then he gave Minjun something and said, "Let's eat it alone." After giving it, the lieutenant also left. Minjun took the cake and thought, "I always carry this with me." After thinking about it, Minjun smiled. "I was about to take off the cake and eat it, but someone came and called, 'Minjun.'" Lee Dongjun asked a little shyly, "I carefully watched the swordplay demonstration. If possible, during the break, can you take a look at my posture?" Minjun stood up in surprise and asked again, "Me?" Lee Dongjun also explained, "I know it's your first time training today." Then Lee Dongjun shyly asked again, "The main weapon is a sword, but I'm still not satisfied when confronting monsters. You don't need to feel burdened. Can you take a look and help me?" Minjun heard that and replied, "If I needed help, I would have helped." Hearing that, Lee Dongjun started practicing the movements again. Minjun thought, the movements clearly showed that he had practiced very hard. This is truly the swordsmanship of the Hunter Corps. Kim Minjun was watching and remembered his timid appearance while working. Thinking about it, the problem wasn't the movements. What Private Lee Dongjun was missing was. His eyes were sharp and thoughtful, confident. Remembering when he was at Asgard training others, Minjun thought, "I'm also an expert in editing that, I'm looking at it." After thinking about it, he smiled and silently calculated, "That's right, this is not the time yet. When the time comes, I will help him become a top hunter." On Saturday, the day of the promotion survey, the soldiers still calmly sat and watched TV. Others are playing basketball. Some people calmly play chess. Suddenly on the loudspeaker an announcement was made. Ahem. This is a message from the administrative officer's office. Hunters scheduled to take the promotion survey. Please go to the military training area immediately. Please repeat. Everyone who heard the announcement suddenly looked up. Kim Minjun is also ready. The speakers continue to report, the hunters are there. Minjun smiled confidently and thought, it's time to become a non-commissioned officer. Not long after that, everyone was present at the gathering yard. The lieutenant spoke, "Is everyone gathered now? I am Lieutenant Kim Chaelman, part of the 2nd Battalion, number 2 Squad, commander of the 2nd Squadron. Today I will be your instructor, everyone. I hope everyone will listen carefully to my words. First, please report the number of military ranks from each of your teams." The shuttle bus also arrived quickly. The lieutenant carefully gave instructions and acted quickly and steadily. After everyone got on the bus, Corporal Kim continued to announce that, as everyone knows, the promotion test will be held at Division Number 105. Now we will go to Gapyeong where the test will take place. Survey. The car started moving. Corporal Kim kept reminding, everyone could review the practice questions while on the road. Everyone in the car seemed very tense. Suddenly Minjun heard 2 soldiers above talking to each other. "Have you heard the news? Platoon number 4 also came to the survey today." The other soldier replied, "What, so there will be girls to look at today?" The remaining soldiers happily smiled and said, "Hee, I will be able to show them my skill in using weapons. I have been practicing for a whole year just to flirt with the girls." The other soldiers followed along to support. "Oh, maybe they would ask for your number 2, well that would be too difficult for me." Minjun encouraged himself and thought, "That's right, let's try our best." Soon the car was ready to arrive. Gyeonggi-do, Gapyeong, Division Number 105, Division Headquarters. 4th Promotion Test, Written Examination Room Number 7. In the room, all the soldiers are seriously doing their homework. After finishing the test, Lieutenant Kang angrily announced that, except for you and Jungwook from the 2nd Battalion of the 1st 0 Military Region, everyone passed. Every hunter except you and Jungwook please head to the practical test room immediately. This turns out to be a confident soldier who will shine in the eyes of the women while on the bus. The rest of the soldiers teased him. "Were you born stupid or did you practice? How could you fail the written test for hunters which was easier than the driver's license test?" He could only go away and reply, "Sorry." Kim Minjun didn't care about them, just smiled and walked ahead. Suddenly from behind the group a figure appeared. It's Sun Yunseo. She's also here. The next day, the test continued. The lieutenant informed everyone. Everyone here had worked hard to be here. Including supervisors, the number 105 division would like to welcome you. I'm Lieutenant Lee Cholju, who will be in charge of supervision for this promotion test. Our goal is not just to find people worthy of a promotion. In order to call on all 3 divisions to fight healthily and fairly, the soldiers below were starting to get bored with the lieutenant's lengthy presentation. Why don't we just start the test? Feel so sleepy. But he still said, finally in this year's promotion test, there were candidates taking the exam based on a special exception. They were Division 10 Kim Minjun and Private Sun Yunseo. Hearing her name mentioned, Yunseo blushed a little shyly. The lieutenant continued speaking. Even though he had only been a hunter for less than a year, Minjun thought excitedly, is there still someone else besides me? The lieutenant continued, everyone knows Division 104, right? Remember not to cause any misunderstandings. A soldier wondered to the person next to him. It seems like the rumor is that you will be put on the exception list if you sign up for the front line, with extremely high scores. The other soldier sighed and replied, there were kids who were given offers during the year I joined the army, but they all refused the offer, if it was the 1st Division or the 4th Division then. Well, they were surprised to hear the information. One of them had already achieved the title of Private First Class. They immediately whispered and searched for Minjun. It's Kim Minjun, right? Sun Yunseo also gradually paid attention to this new guy. She quickly spotted him in the military ranks. With a private label on his chest, Minjun suddenly looked back at her, surprising her. He still looked back at her in surprise, causing Yunseo to quickly shyly look away. Minjun still acted as if nothing happened and ignored her. Finally, the lieutenant finished his long explanation. Everyone should try their best, all. Then someone else stepped up to the podium and said, I am Captain Zheng Sangshil. Now we will start with a test of your strength, endurance and stamina. First will be a test of strength, nothing complicated. Just push back the examiner in front of you. Minjun immediately felt familiar. Being able to move it was considered successful. He sighed in frustration and thought, why are all tests like this? It's ridiculous. The captain announced that everyone's time limit was 1 minute. Scores will be evaluated on the 100 scale and the highest score will be plus 10 meters of movement. Those whose names will be called will start taking the test first. First, Private Kim Jin-hyuk of the 103rd Division, please step forward. The private soldier whose name was called boldly moved forward. Use all your strength to push hard on the model's shoulders. He used so much force that his face turned red and his veins popped out. But the examiner used that same shoulder to bounce back. The team leader immediately reported that Kim Jin-hyuk had no points and was eliminated. He continued, let me tell you this, comrades, those who score lower than 40 points in this test will automatically be disqualified from the promotion test. Hearing that, the crowd was talking loudly. Continue to the next one. Jang Wonho, 10 points, eliminated. Lee Maju, 20 points, out. She said angrily, he didn't even move. Ah, damn it. Zheng Yuna, 0 points, eliminated. Zhang Daoan, 15 points, eliminated. Looking at the weak soldiers, the lieutenant darkened his face and silently blamed him. Ah, these bastards. Luckily someone finally passed the test. Sun Yunso belongs to Division 104, 50 points, passed. All the boys looked at her with their mouths open in surprise. The other examiner was also surprised at her. She calmly walked back to her position. The boys were surprised, talking, wow, is that lipstick hunter Yunseo, wow, she's so pretty. Isn't that her? Her father is the division commander. Damn, so that strength comes from genes, wow. Look at her cold face, I think I'll die if I look any closer. But she didn't pay attention to them and just glanced slightly at Minjun. Now she walked confidently as if wanting to provoke him. Minjun still thought calmly, so she is an exception like me. The captain continued to call out names. Kim Minjun of Division 104 stepped forward. He quickly spoke, Private First Class Kim Minjun is walking up. Then confidently walked up to the examiner without any fear. Minjun thought back, I shouldn't have done what I did with the red jelly, right? Then smiled and replied to himself, but if I can push him more than 10 meters, maybe I will get bonus points. He took the momentum and rushed forward. Motivate examiners. Minjun still stood still, just pushed with both hands and legs to hold steady, causing him to immediately be thrown back. The remaining soldiers gasped in fear. There was a fierce echo and pieces of the floor scattered. The examiner's face darkened and he tried to keep himself steady. The floor surface was also dented in 2 lines following his footprints. The examiner was now sweating profusely, and the team leader was also speechless. After a while, he stammered, Private Kim Minjun, 100 points. Not seeing any further notification, Minjun scratched his head dejectedly. So there are no bonus points. Sun Yunseo has been looking at him from surprise to confusion.